All right, we're live, man. We are live. Welcome everybody to another episode of Monday Night Live on the 10 Horse Monty YouTube channel. So glad everybody could join us tonight. It's going to be a good show, man. You're the first kayak guy that we've ever had on here. So this is exciting. Kayak fishing's like really blown up over the last several years. So appreciate you taking time to jump on here with us.
Man, I'm honored, dude. I really appreciate you having me on. I've watched your show for a while now, and you guys do an awesome job of your presentation, and your show's really well put together. So I was excited to get the invitation. Thank you.
Yeah.
If they only knew like the madness that ensues 5 minutes
behind the scenes, the backstage stuff.
So
no, that's cool, man. Yeah, it's good to have you on here. I was thinking about, it's been a while ago. I was starting to think about kayak stuff because around here we see that like the kayak fishing is the last couple of years has just really grown. And I was talking to Jonathan. It's been like a month or so ago, and it was about the time that I got a hold of you and asked if you'd be wanting to come on the stream, and your name just kind of popped out because you've been killing it lately. So for everybody who doesn't know, this is Chad on the other end, and do you still live in Columbia, Missouri?
I do. It's my hometown.
Okay, cool. So you're about 2 hours from Lake of the Ozarks, something like that?
No, I mean, from my house, it's like, the closest ramp is like Coffin Beach. I can be there in about an hour and 15 minutes.
Nice.
Same PB2s, like not much further than that. So it's pretty close.
Yeah, that's cool. Unfortunately it's about 4.5 hours from both of us. But
most of the lakes in Missouri are farther away from us than the lakes in Southern Illinois.
Yeah, so most of the Southern Illinois stuff's like an hour from us, but all the other big lakes are 4.5, 5 hours. So
here in Missouri, the Moyak, which is was actually one of the largest kayak clubs in the country. It's based out of the guy who runs it lives in Joplin, but it seems like the bulk of people are kind of around the Springfield area or like Table Rock, so like southern Missouri. And so a lot of the tournaments they have are, Bull Shoals, Table Rock, Taneycomo. We get some Stockton, Palm, Truman in there. I don't get to go to Lake of the Ozarks as much as I used to. We have like one tournament there, maybe two a year. So I still get to fish it, but not as much as I used to. But I'm doing a lot more dry. I love Table Rock too, so I'm not mad about that. But that's like more like a 4-hour drive. So
Table Rock is?
For me, yeah. Well, it depends on what part you go to, but yeah, it's 3:45 or 4 hours.
Gotcha. That's about what it is for us, isn't it? About 4?
It's about 5.
Is it 5?
Yeah, it's about 5. Because I'll go up through St. Louis. I usually meet my buddy Mike.
Yeah, you always go up to Mike.
Yeah, so. And then we get on 44 and go down that way. I'm just riding, so I'm not paying attention most of the time. But yeah, it's a haul. But it's just. It is what it is. It's worth it. It's nice to have 2 or 3 days at least when you get down there.
Right.
Saw you had a good finish down there.
Yeah, man. It was a grind. We needed every bit of time to get it done. I had a great boater. We fished. The lake was up like 11 feet, so there's all this cover in the water. It's super tempting. And we went down there and we got on the water about, like 3:00 on Thursday. Mike and I, it was a debacle on the way down there. We had a flat tire. So we pulled in this quick shop, and luckily this tow truck was getting coffee at the quick shop. He came over, he pulled a bunch of tools out, helped us out, and he didn't have the right size driver. And we were in between. This quick shop was kind of a little private auto body shop. So these guys just came, like they were out getting lunch and they pulled up. They went and got a floor jack and, all the stuff, man. We ripped the tire off, put a spare on. I made a phone call there just happened to be this place called like Grandpa's Used Tires or something, and it was like 2 miles down the road on some gravel road. So I called. Mike's got like 20-inch tires, which is not real common.
Not easy to replace.
Yeah, believe it or not, his spare was a 19-inch, so it wouldn't have been good, to tow the rest of the way down. We were still about an hour and a half away from the lake, and this little used tire place out in the middle of nowhere had one used 20-inch tire, believe it or not. So we dropped the boat. I stood out in this quick shop parking lot with the boat, and Mike ran, got the tire swapped out, came back, we hooked it back up and made it down to the lake. But when we got out there, we were seeing all those bushes in the water, and they're so tempting. They're so tempting. But the thing is it was so, if it would only been like 2 feet high, they probably would have moved into those outside bushes. But it goes so far back into the jungle, man. They're just spread out. And I'm sure there was,
and it was so fast too. It came up super fast. Yeah.
Yeah. So we never really got, anything going in the bushes. I mean, we had one little stretch where I caught 2 or 3 keepers really quick. But that was it. We fished Friday, we fished 3 or 4 hours worth of that brush. And I had one pinned up against the wood. It broke me off. Mike had about a 4-pounder on top water, and he had a couple follows, but that was like 4 hours of just focusing on flipping. So we kind of ditched that and theorized that they were probably still out, on the old bank line, out there. And basically those fish spawn in, 8 to 12 foot. So you put another 10, 11 foot on top of that, you need to be fishing in that 20-foot zone. And that's what my boater did, the draw that I got. We fished main lake points, and we were kind of fishing that 20-foot zone. And we didn't catch a whole lot of fish, but I think I caught 2 shorts, maybe 3 shorts, and then 5 keepers, which is all I needed. And, I got my 5th fish at 145. He got his 5th fish at 209. We had a 230 weigh in. So we needed the whole day. Plus we had a 2-hour and 15-minute fog delay. So it was a super short day.
Yeah.
It goes by so quick. It's like, next thing you know, it's 12 o'clock and you're like, man, we only got 2.5 hours left. It's just goes by quick. But yeah, I like that lake, man. The more I go down there, the more I like it. You can do so much down there. You can run, up the James, you can run up the Kings, the White, and fish that dirty water if you want, or you can stay down there by Cumberland City all the way to the dam, and you have 13, 14 foot visibility. You can fish 60, 70 foot of water, or you can fish 2 foot of water. It's super versatile lake.
It's a great lake for kayakers too, because we can put in at any public access. In some lakes, like Lake of the Ozarks, the access points are a lot more few and far between that are public. There's so much private property around Lake of the Ozarks that you're really limited on your public access. But Table Rock's got a ton. It's such a big lake. Guys can really spread out, and a lot of those upriver areas that the kayakers like to get into. That's a long run for the boaters, and so it's a great lake for kayakers too.
Now, do you have to have a boat ramp to launch your setup, or can you drag your setup or wheel your setup?
Well, I mean, speaking in general, for most kayakers, no, they don't need a boat ramp at all. It just has to be public. Like Truman has got tons of just gravel banks that a road dead ends, and as long as it's public, a lot of the guys just put the kayak in the back of their truck and drag it out. And I've got a little bit more of my setup. I've got it's an Old Town Autopilot 136, which is I call it, it's kind of like the Cadillac of kayaks, and it's super heavy. It's the only drawback to it. And so I have a trailer, and I wet launch it 90% of the time.
Okay.
Where I launch like a bass boat. I back it down to the water. I've got a rope. I slide it off, pull it up on the bank, go park the truck, and then go get my kayak. And I mean, I can launch and load just as fast as somebody with a bass boat, probably faster. But I usually am launching from a concrete boat ramp, or if it's a decent gravel ramp or something, that works too. But I have in a pinch, I mean, I can drag it off the trailer, load everything into it, and then kind of reverse it when I'm taking out. It's just, I don't like to do that because it's a lot more lifting and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of the guys just they'll put in like, there might be a overpass, you know, over a road going over the lake or something. And if there's like a spot where they can drag their kayak down there, they might do that to get to a spot that, you know, it's difficult to get to try and, you know, get away from everybody. But
For
I
sure.
mean, it's one of the advantages of kayaks is, you know, we're a lot, you know, it's kind of a general strategy to try to get to places that bass boats don't go to or can't get to.
Now, is yours, I'm assuming since you said Cadillac, yours has got some sort of electric propulsion.
Yep. Yeah. Old Town designed this boat around.
That's a tricky word.
Liz.
Propulsion. Propulsion. Yeah, you got it.
You got a motor.
Sorry.
Yeah. It's got a trolling motor. It's actually like it's basically an Ultrex. It's a 45-pound thrust, 12 volt. It's got, you know, it's spot lock and, you know, heading lock and all that stuff. It's basically an Ultrex. It's just got a shorter shaft and it's integrated into the kayak where it's just like a unit and it just basically snaps in. You plug it in. It takes about, you know, 20 seconds to put it in the kayak and hook it up. And you basically, you pull a rope, it lowers it down, and then you got a remote that I wear it around my neck. And I control it with the remote. And I think a lot of the full size Ultrexes on the bass boats come with the remote too.
Right.
But a lot of guys don't use it. But I mean, that's the only thing I have. I don't have a foot pedal. So, I mean, that's one thing that takes some practice and getting used to is, you know, I'm steering and controlling the trolling motor with one hand with the remote and fishing. So, you know, sometimes, you know, you're stopping in the middle of a cast, kind of adjust or something. But, you know, with the heading lock and spot lock and all that, even if it's windy, I mean, it is a huge advantage over paddling or even pedaling. The big thing for me is I fished in a bass boat for 25 years and I'm used to fishing while I'm standing up. And I bought a Hobie, you know, with their pedal drive. And I fished out of that for about 6 months and I didn't really like it that much. And then I got hooked up with Everhart's Outdoors in Clinton and they got me in this Old Town autopilot. And it was revolutionary for me in fishing out of a kayak. I absolutely love fishing out of that thing. I can stand up. I stand up and fish 99% of the day. The only time I sit down is if I'm like motoring between spots. But if I'm casting, I'm standing up. And there's not too many kayaks that you can do that in that are stable enough and that you can, you know, you can't paddle or pedal while you're standing up. So even a lot of kayaks are stable enough that you can stand up in them, but you still got to sit down to maneuver. And with this, you know, Minn Kota trolling motor and the autopilot, it's very doable to stand up all day and fish in the wind. I fish banks that are so windy sometimes that bass boats are like literally avoiding them. And I can still fish, you know, there'll be big rollers and stuff and I'll just spot lock and fish. So
that's sweet. I didn't know that they had a spot lock trolling motor for a kayak. That makes total sense. Total sense.
Well, I mean, what do we always say with our John boats? It's, you know, going from our big boats to our John boats to a kayak. I always said an Ultrex would be better suited for a John boat than it would be a big boat because big boat, yeah, you get blown around in the wind, but if that gust of wind hits a 21-foot Ranger, it goes like this. If that gust of wind hits our John boat, we're up on the bank in about 2 seconds.
And a kayak's
moves even worse.
Faster. Yeah.
So
a kayak's kind of like a leaf.
Yeah, no doubt, man. What
made you jump from big boats to kayaks?
Well, I mean, basically I kind of progressively was fishing, like I started out fishing a bass club, fished Ozark Mountain Anglers in Columbia for 20 years, and you know, went from not having any tournament experience to I won Angler of the Year in that club like 6 times, I think, with 2 different partners. and I fished it for a long time, and eventually I decided I wanted to fish something more challenging, higher entry fees. I started fishing Solo Pro Series, and fished that for 3 years. I did really well the first year, made a run at Angler of the Year. I think I finished second, and then the next year I finished in the top 10. Third year, something happened, and I think in my mind it had to do with I started to dwell too much on how much money I was spending fishing the tournaments, because I had a Ranger bass boat. You know, I had the boat payment, you know, all the expenses that come along with the boat. And then I started having you know, I was trying while I was fishing the Solo Pro Series, I kept trying to get further and further up these rivers and creeks into places that are harder to get to, try and find fish that other people aren't getting, you know, pretty much places that are made for kayaks. And I did a bunch of damage to my boat. The last year I was in Solo Pro, I had to have my prop shaft replaced twice because I bent it, hitting trees. And then I nailed a tree going up Tebow at Truman on plane. And I mean, it basically, I'm surprised it didn't put a hole in the bottom. Just a testament to how tough Rangers are, but it did spider crack the gel coat all the way down one side on the bottom. And it was basically $10,000 worth of fiberglass damage I had to have repaired. And I mean, insurance covered it, but it's still not a good deal. And you know, all the money I was spending, I got to where I wasn't having fun. I was just worried about, you know, I'm not winning any money. I'm spending all this money, and then it's got to where I wasn't enjoying it. And what made me start thinking about kayaks was I was at Stockton Lake pre-fishing for one of the Solo Pro Series events in the summer, and there was a kayak tournament there at the same time. It was one of the Moyak tournaments, and I was seeing these kayaks everywhere, you know, and I was just kind of got fascinated looking at all the different setups and all these different guys out there, you know, fishing out of them. And I caught some fish, but I was kind of struggling trying to figure out, you know, finding some fish for this tournament. And basically after my day, I go online and look at the results of the Moyak tournament. One of the guys caught over 100 inches in this kayak tournament, where I had been totally struggling just to catch keepers. And I mean, that's like a 20-pound bag out of a kayak, you know? And I'm like, dude, these guys can catch fish. They're catching some monster fish. And so that really intrigued me. And, you know, I fished the rest of the year in Solo Pro, but was just kind of, like I said, not enjoying it. And at the end of the year, I was kind of just a spur of the moment, quick decision. I just decided to sell my bass boat. And, you know, I was looking at, you know, the presidential elections, Biden's getting elected. I'm thinking gas prices are going to go out the roof. I don't want to be stuck with this bass boat. I'm tired of dumping all this money into this bass boat. I can sell the bass boat. Prices were good on used boats. I was able to sell it, got a really good price for it, bought a kayak. And I mean, I had money to spare. I'm like, so I can go fishing now. I'm not worried about all the money I'm spending. And, you know, I caught more fish, I feel like, out of the kayak than I did out of a bass boat. And I think for me personally, something clicked. I'm not spending all this time running around the lake. You basically, you have to pick an area, and it's pretty much key to find an area in practice that's holding fish. But then in the tournament, you settle down and you fish what's in front of you, and you're not worried about running around. You're just fishing. And you know, you got to be versatile, because you know, you're not able to run a pattern as much as you can out of a bass boat. It's more like fishing an area. And so you got to be able to, you know, you might catch one on a point, and then, you know, you might, you know, maybe fishing a jig out on a point, but then, you know, you might go in the back of a pocket and catch one on a wacky rig Senko or something. And I mean, you're kind of like fishing anything that looks good in front of you. And that kind of suited my style better. A lot of guys really like running around the lake in their bass boats. And, you know, I kind of get it, but I wasn't one of those guys. I never enjoyed running around. I was always worried about hitting stuff. I was worried about how much gas I was burning, you know, running 25 miles. And, you know, I don't worry now. I just, you know, I settle down and fish. And there's been so many advantages that I've discovered since I've been doing this that I feel like it's a much better fit for me. And I've won way more money out of a kayak than I ever did out of a bass boat. It's amazing, these kayak tournaments. We just had one at Table Rock for Moyak, had over 150 boats in it. Pays out, you know, in the thousands. I fished the All-American Kayak Series also. You know, those tournaments regularly pay out several $1,000s to the winner. So we're fishing for real money. These guys are serious fishermen. We have a lot of guys that I fish with that fish the national circuits. And you know, I'd say probably the average skill level there's a wider range of skills in the kayak world because it's growing so fast. You got a lot of people that are just getting into it, but we've got some hammers too. So, you know, it's just, I feel like I don't really miss the bass boat. Only thing I really miss is my friends that I had in the bass boat side of it, but it's really good.
That's great. It's kind of, there's definitely a parallel, and I know you're probably thinking this of the John boat and the kayak, because especially when you start talking about finances, the amount of money that we burn on gas in an aluminum boat is much less than a glass boat. I mean, we can fish. We have 3-gallon tank in our John boat, and we can fish
2 days.
2 days. Yeah, no problem. I mean, I can run all over the lake and burn a gallon of gas pretty much, maybe a gallon and a half if I really get crazy and I'm point hopping and stuff. Where you try to do that same thing in a glass boat and you're burning 14, 15 gallons, you know, even on a small lake. So there's definitely a parallel in the cost savings. And I understand
and pulling the boat.
Pulling the boat. Yeah. You know, you're
driving 2 hours to the lake or hour to the lake. I mean, we drive an hour to the lake every time we go to the lake, at least. And it's, you know, fortunately it's flat roads here to drive there, but you know, you get in the hills outside of some of the
Table Rock,
really exactly.
Yeah.
Wear and tear on your truck. We don't have that with the John boats because I mean, our John boats are big and comfortable and wide, but
we're pulling maybe 1,000 pounds, I would think, and versus a glass boat's probably 5,000 pounds. So there's fuel savings all around, the wear and tear on your vehicle, and then you know, I fish a lot as a co-angler in the BFLs, and part of the reason is because of the financial burden of going to the boater side. One, there's the maintenance on your tow vehicle and your actual glass boat, and then there's the higher entry fees, and then there's the fuel. You know, if you're fishing pre-fishing 2 or 3 days, that's a lot of gas.
Even the higher entry fees, those almost a wash at that point. I mean, by the time you put, like you said, fuel, and
unless you win, you know, consistently,
you're not,
even a top 10 is not gonna, you know, I mean, it's great to get a top 10, but you're not breaking even by any means.
Well, heck, even as a co-angler, as a top 10 barely gets you even for the weekend.
Right.
By the time you drive there, get a hotel, all of that.
So it gets ridiculously expensive. I mean, and then you take it up a notch even higher when you're talking about, you know, Bassmaster Elites or MLF, you know, BPT. They're spending or the Opens and the Toyota Series.
Probably
those guys are not making money. They're losing money.
The Opens are even worse. I mean, high entry fee and crappy payouts. I'll be the first one to say it.
You're doing it.
You're doing it for one goal. That's to make the elites or to make a classic.
And it's a passion. It's something that you're not, most people aren't making the money. I mean, sometimes down the road, if you get an actual non-endemic or a good paying sponsor where they're paying for your entry fees, they'll take care of that for you. But, you know, most of the time you're still got to come up with the lodging cost and the fuel and stuff. So bass fishing, especially tournament fishing,
it's not a glamorous life.
No, it's not a money-making thing. I mean, there's few people that really make a living on it. We're doing it because, you know, we love it. And there's less of a burden on the John boat and kayak side, I would say. There's more bang for your buck. And like you said, I mean, kayaks, man, I've seen these guys, they parallel that inside grass line where if we can't really get in there and do that, you know, they can float in a foot of the water and say you got riprap and then you got 5 foot before that inside grass line. They can get up in there and just kind of sneak down that, make that parallel inside cast. And those fish,
that's a juicy
they're not
cast.
seeing that cast, man. They're just not seeing that cast.
And you're staying in that strike zone the whole time, right? Because you're right there. You know, we can make that cast and we can
flip in, and then we're working on one little area.
You got like a 5 foot section to cover, and then you're back out again.
So. Yeah, so it's pretty stuff.
I absolutely love fishing around docks at Lake of the Ozarks now. I used to kind of dread it because I had a Z21 Ranger. It was a beautiful boat, really nice gel coat, you know, immaculate. And I didn't want to get up on the cables. I didn't want the dock corners scratching it. I didn't want, you know, all that stuff. And now, you know, not only is I don't have to worry about scratching my kayak, I'll get right up against the dock cables and just stand there and pitch behind the docks, no problem. I've even got a power pole micro anchor on the back, so I can get up there against cables, put my power pole down, and just sit there, and it's no problem. But the kayaks are so much more maneuverable inside. I mean, they're smaller, so when you get back in between the docks, you just got so much more ability to maneuver around. And kayaks are, I mean, you think about the water displacement of a bass boat, forget about the trolling motor noise, forget about the electronics, but just the displacement of the boat moving through the water, pushing water, the fish can sense that. And with a kayak, you're displacing so much less water that, I mean, you don't spook the fish like you do out of a bass boat. I've caught fish just right in front of me that I swear I don't know how they didn't know I was there. And they don't know you're there, especially if you shut off your electronics. You know, you can, you know, when it's super calm and quiet, I'll even, instead of using my trolling motor, I'll just get my paddle and kind of move around and to try and be super quiet, you know. And those fish don't know you're there. You don't spook them like you do out of a bass boat. So, I mean, those are all huge advantages.
You brought up one thing, and I never even thought about it until you just said it. Fishing docks, Lake of the Ozarks, Table Rock, doesn't really matter where, any docks around out of a kayak versus a 21-foot boat, you can fish.
You can get underneath the walkways.
Well, you can do that, but you can fit. You put in the same spot. I don't know how to explain this here, but you put a 21-foot boat in that spot. You're taking up 21 foot of real estate, right? You put your 13-foot kayak in there. That's
not nearly as wide.
Not nearly as wide. Yeah. You can fish where that boat would be sitting at.
Yep.
In the same spot. It's just, you're not the water displacement, the intrusiveness. You're just
you can let it go right up on the bank, and you can, you know, where the cable attaches to the bank, you know, you can just pull right up there, and then you can fish that whole area behind the dock, just like it's no problem at all. And
like you're bank fishing, basically.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then when I'm done, I just turn on the trolling motor on high and I zoom around the dock and I go to the next one. And you know, it's been amazing. It's something I didn't think about till I started doing it, and it's been amazing for fishing around docks. Actually, I really love fishing around docks now. But
now, when you fish these tournaments, is there any rules like you can't get out of the kayak? Like in a tournament, we can't get out of the boat in a tournament. Is there the same rules apply in the kayak world, or can you get out, drag your boat
from point A to point B to point C? Or
so most of the tournaments will allow you to move spots during the day. So you could pull out, drive to another creek or whatever, and put in again. Most of them allow you to do that. Some of them, like Moyak, even allows you to just beach your boat and fish off the bank if you want to. If it's super windy day,
and leave your boat.
You have to stay within sight of your boat, and then if you catch a fish, which we haven't really talked about the whole submitting fish thing, but you know, when you catch fish, you got to put it on your official board, We have catch boards that you have to take a picture of the fish on the board and submit that. That picture has to be taken inside your kayak. So if you catch one, you got to go back to your kayak, take your picture. But yeah, if it's like a super windy day and you're in a paddle kayak and you're struggling, you can just pull that thing on the bank and then just go walk down the bank with a spinnerbait or whatever. And I mean, as long as it's public, you can't do it if it's private property, but
Right.
But as long as it's public, and you can fish off the bank. Not every tournament allows you to do that, but some of them do. And Moyak is really beginner friendly. They try to make it so that it's as easy as possible on everyone of all skill levels, and I think that's part of the reason they do that. But
that's cool.
Well, the financial commitment there is too. I mean, like you said, you got a trolling motor, you got a power pole, you got your boat set up, probably decked out to the nines, but you don't have to have that to be a kayak angler. Heck, you don't have to have that to be a John boat angler. I mean, I got 4 graphs on my boat. You have 3 graphs on your boat, and we're fishing out of a couple $1,000 John boat. I mean, we have them set up how we want to fish, and that makes us comfortable. Same thing with you. You got your boat set up exactly how you want. And that there's a question or a comment on our feed here that says, what's the best beginner fish finder that won't break the bank that has down scan? You want to take a lead on that, Chad?
Well, I mean, I can tell you what I use, and I mean, everybody has their own, comfort level as far as what they want to spend. I mean, I'm coming from, I had on my Ranger, I had 2 HDS 12 lives, and then also a 9-inch Garmin with live scope, and so I had $7,000 or $8,000 in graphs. And then when I went to the kayak, I've got one 9-inch Garmin 93 SV that's got side scan, down scan, and 2D sonar. I don't have live scope on the kayak. Some guys do. But I mean, I think you can get in one of those units. I mean, I when I bought mine, it was like $600. I don't know like what they are right now. I don't have the latest version, but to me, that's pretty reasonable. Some guys, that's still way more than they want to spend. So, I mean, but to me, that's a great graph. It comes with the maps built in. It's got good side and down scan, and it's worked flawless for me. So, I mean, that's one I would recommend.
Yeah, I would second that as far as the size for sure. Me personally, I think a 9-inch graph is about the smallest I would go. If I could only afford a 7, I would probably just save up until I could afford a 9. But I know Lowrance makes is it the TI?
The Elite FS.
Elite FS, which is their lower price point graph. That's pretty good. And then you've got the Garmin 93 SV, the Humminbird. I'm not sure what they have.
The Helix, there's a Helix 9, there's a Helix 10, there's a Helix 12.
But I think all those are under that $1,000 price point.
I think so.
But that'd be my recommendation. But go with the 9-inch graph.
I would say don't limit yourself to down scan. If I would make sure you get side scan as well. Down scan is helpful, but side scan is going to open up, 100 feet on either side of the boat if you want. So I think to wrap what everybody was saying up is get a biggest screen that you can afford.
Right. Always.
If you're on the fence, save your money for a little bit longer and get the next size bigger. Because it's kind of the way of men or the way of fishing. We get one and we always want something bigger. I mean, we were talking about that a couple weeks ago. You got back from both shows, and the guy you fished with Delco, and he had a 12-inch, and he was wishing he had a 16-inch. We have a 10-inch, and you were wishing you had a 12-inch. So yeah, it's kind of, you always want something bigger.
But I know for a fact that if you get a 7, you're going to be disappointed,
100%,
especially if you're trying to
100%.
run a side scan on it, or if you even think about splitting the screen. You put a map and then down scan. It's really, really small. 9. That's what I have on the front of my boat. I have an HDS Live 9. It's an HDS Gen 3 9, and it's fine. You split it. It's fine. I usually have down scan and map and a graph, and
But
It's great. But if it was a 7, it would be too small.
You really got to think about it. You split a 9-inch screen. Now you got 4.5 inches of map and 4.5 inches of where.
And you can adjust it a little bit. You know, you can.
I always keep my downscan pretty small and my map big, but that's me.
Right. Right now, you don't need anything. You just go fishing.
Just leave it all at the house.
I feel very comfortable with my 9. I run it split half the screen on side scan, and then the other half split between down and then my map. That's most of the time. And I mean, I never feel like I'm struggling or it's not enough for me.
How close is yours in that kayak? I would imagine it's pretty close.
Yeah, it's just off to my side. Some guys they'll run something across and do it right in the middle in front of them. We've got tracks on most of the kayaks have tracks built in, and then they make different mounts for the graphs and stuff that'll mount to those tracks. And mine's just off to the side, and it's pretty close. So yeah, you're not. I mean, I am standing, and sometimes the glare is a little bit of an issue for me. And I had one of those little. I think Burley Pro or whatever makes like a little visor deal, and I didn't like it because it was so bulky. I took it off, but the glare is a little bit of an issue sometimes when I'm standing. But yeah, it works good.
Well, let's catch up on some of these questions. We got several questions on here, but before we go any further, just want to
giveaway.
Yes, I just want to make an announcement. Tonight's live stream is sponsored by Crocagator, so we are going to be doing a huge Crocagator giveaway, and for anybody that's on here that hasn't been a part of the giveaway in the past, the way it works is sometime during the live stream, we will make a reference to Sasquatch. When you hear that golden magic word, guess a number between 1 and 200. Chad has already picked a number. We've got it written down right here. Whoever guesses that number is going to win a big prize package from Crocagator, and it's going to be nice. So spread the word. We got 60 people on here right now. We start getting up there around 80, 90. We will definitely start working that magic word into the mix and
so
do that
share
big
it, like,
share it, like it. Tell your
send
uncle,
it to your
tell
cousin,
your grandpa, tell your grandma,
mom.
I talked to Joey earlier about some of the baits. She asked me what some of the baits I would recommend, like some of my favorites, and so I've got an idea what some of the baits are, and I can show you a few of them at some point, but they're some good baits. They're some of my favorites.
Awesome.
Yeah, let's definitely we definitely want to dive into some of the Crocagator baits. But let's touch on some of these questions before we get too far behind here. Stephanie's got she's got a pretty good question. She says, "Have you ever come in contact with any aggressive snakes while kayak fishing?"
So not yet, but I'm always like looking out, like from this time of the year, on. I mean, because you're right there at water level, I mean, I've heard stories, I've seen them, and then like when I see one swimming, it's like I'm like watching that thing like a hawk. I keep turning around and looking because it's like one of my biggest fears is that it's going to crawl up inside the kayak behind me when I don't realize it and be in the boat with me. And that's probably going to end up with one of us ending up in the water.
Or both.
Or both of us. So, yeah, I definitely worry about the snakes sometimes, but I haven't had any bad experiences yet.
Yeah, I had a snake today that was trying to get in the boat. I saw him. I was fishing the back of this cut, and I saw him coming towards me. And I think it looked too orange to be an American water snake. It was banded, it was diamond, but it was more, I couldn't really tell. It looked copperheadish, but I don't know,
Typically you're not going to see a copperhead swimming.
That's what I kept telling myself. I'm like, they don't swim. It's not a copperhead, but it kept getting closer and closer. And I was throwing what was I throwing? I was throwing a swim jig. I was kind of skipping my swim jig at it, and it just kept coming. And I was slapping the water with my rod tip, and it kept coming. I put my Ultrex on about 6, and I pulled away from him, and it just kept swimming. So
you were just in its way.
I was just in its way. It wasn't coming for me. I was just in its way.
I had that.
But I'm in a John boat, so a kayak, you're quite a bit closer to the water.
Dad and I had that happen over in Gerardo. We were fishing down a bank, and it was this was a cottonmouth. So this was a venomous snake in the state of Missouri. But it was swimming down the bank. No big deal. And we had been fishing along the bank, and it was kind of keeping pace with us. All of a sudden, out of whatever, it turned, and it headed right toward us, like you were just saying. Well, he came up and he opened his mouth and he's like coming at the boat and he's head over the top of my boat.
Oh my gosh.
And Dad's slapping the water and getting the paddle and trying to get it away from us. Finally gets away from us, but it was bound and determined to get in the boat with us.
I had a snake at I was fishing.
My fear would be to lose it in the boat once it got in the boat.
Yeah, it goes in your rod locker or something. I was fishing some strip pit up in Pinckneyville. I think this was last year. I think it's on one of the videos I dropped. I can't remember which lake it was, but I was at Peabody River King. Anyway, I seen this little green snake swimming across the water, and it was close to the front of my boat. And I'm looking, and it goes, in front of my boat, and I'm waiting for it to swim out the other side, and it never swims out the other side. And I'm like, did it go under the boat? No. Next thing you know, I look up, and that it crawled up my truck. No, this was at Cedar. It was a green snake. It was back there at the splitter point.
Okay.
In the creek.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That was a different snake at the other place. But next thing you know, I see this little green head right above the top of my trolling motor head looking at me. It had crawled up my trolling motor shaft. It was right there, literally 3-4 feet away from me. And I'm like, I start talking to it, right? Like it understands English, but I told it, I said, hey, there's only room in this boat for one person. You need to get on. And I kind of, did this, and it jumped in the water and swam off. But man, if that would have been a cottonmouth,
do you like snakes, or do they bother you?
They don't bother me. I mean, I like to see them first. If I see them first, I'm okay. I'm a letter carrier for the Postal Service, and there's been a lot of times where I'm out delivering mail and I'm walking through somebody's yard, and all of a sudden I'm gonna step on a snake.
Mm-hmm.
That scares me. That kind of startles me. But if I see them first,
you're good.
I'm okay with it.
Yep.
You don't like snakes at all, do you?
No, that's Jay.
That's Jay. Me. Okay.
No, I was just gonna say I had to get rid of one this weekend, and we did a little lesson with my kids of snakes, and I don't mind snakes. I've handled them enough in my life that I got he was like nestled under my house, so I got him out from underneath the house. It was just a milk snake, and we showed him off to the kids. Caleb, my 2-year-old, had a ball with him. He was just all ingrained in it and wanted to get a little too close for comfort for Dad. But that's the second snake in like 2 weeks that we about stepped on. Mm-hmm. My oldest about stepped on, and then this one was under the house. So
my grandma will straight up turn a 1-piece snake into like a 7 or 8 piece snake,
like that,
with a hoe or a shovel or whatever. Like
my grandma too.
Yeah.
But imagine
Go ahead.
Take that one step further. So there's a lot of kayak tournaments on southern U.S. and I mean, there's a lot of alligators down there. Imagine that deal in a kayak. I mean, I haven't fished around them out of a kayak yet, but it's something that I'm a little bit concerned about. I saw a video recently, Christine Fisher, who's like a really well-known YouTube kayak angler who she fishes the highest level tournaments. And she had a video on YouTube recently of a alligator actually chasing her in her kayak, and it was like waking. It was cruising after her, and she had a Torpedo, which is like a motor on the back of her kayak. They go pretty fast. She was able to outrun it, but that thing was chasing her. So I mean that would bother me more than a snake, I think.
Oh
yes.
Well, at that point, you're lunch, right? I mean,
right.
Snake is maybe a nasty bite or a hospital visit, but
maybe lose a finger.
The right size alligator, you're lunch.
Yeah, he grabs that kayak and starts doing the death roll.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That's nuts.
Well, and you get down there far south U.S., there's some snakes down there that I don't want to tangle with.
Like anacondas and pythons.
Yeah.
Spiders too.
The spiders, yeah.
Stephanie says, how do you handle like rough water? I mean, she says, do you have to stay in certain areas when fishing a kayak, such as fishing the main lake? I know some of the lakes get pretty tough and pretty rough.
I mean, I feel like I can fish in water. Like if a bass boat would be comfortable fishing there, I feel like I can. I've fished in some pretty rough conditions. 20, 25 mile an hour winds. When we were at Table Rock recently, we had 30, 35 mile an hour gusts, and I was fishing in the wind part of the time. But not everybody is like that. It depends on your kayak and it depends on your comfort level. You know, a lot of people that are in the smaller kayaks, or if they're paddling or pedaling, they may just seek out areas that are protected from the wind. They may fish, you know, a lot of kayakers do really well fishing way up, basically where these lakes turn into rivers and creeks, like you know, that really skinny water that the bass boats can't even go to, and that's usually protected from those rough conditions. So I mean, everybody's kind of got their own strategy to deal with that, but I feel like my kayak is a huge advantage for me, and so I try to take advantage of that. I fish windblown areas a lot. I try to fish, you know, areas that's kind of, I usually have them to myself because a lot of the kayakers are avoiding them. So everybody kind of figures out their own strategy, but that's what I do.
Can you sink your kayak?
I'm sure I'm sure you could.
I didn't know if it was like all foam and roto molded, or if there was a spot where
No,
water could get inside and sink it.
so they're sealed. They're like, my kayak's completely sealed. It's it doesn't have much foam in it, but it's just like a big air pocket.
Right.
Now, if you get a crack in it, or if for some reason, like I heard recently about someone forgetting to put they have drain plugs, a lot of them, and their drain plug wasn't in. If they start to take on water, that's bad news. You'll have problems real quick.
Right.
And it depends, you know, there's sit on top kayaks and then there's sit in kayaks, which I've been learning about all this stuff. I mean, I'm a bass boater who started kayak fishing like a little over a year ago, but you know, a sit in kayak is kind of like got a cockpit, and those, like, if they start taking water inside there, if it's not sealed, you know, you have no way to get it out. A sit on top kayak, there's holes that basically the water drains out through the floor of the kayak. So, you know, if you take on like a big wave, it goes right out. And so you don't, you know, it's not a problem. Like I fished on Wilson Lake in Kansas last summer and got stuck out there. It was calm, beautiful day. And out of nowhere, like these 25, 30-mile-an-hour winds came up, and it was like Stockton Lake or something, you know, where you get these big 3 and 4 foot rollers out there. And I was like 2 miles from the ramp. And I mean, it took me a while. I made it back. I was spearing waves and stuff. And I mean, the waves would fill up the cockpit with water. And then there's, like, they call them scuppers, and the water just drains right out. And so they don't sink as long as it stays sealed. But
well, that's kind of what I was getting at. Is you take your kayak out right now and spear 4 waves in a row, it's not going to the bottom of the lake.
No, it's not a problem. I mean, unless on mine,
fish that.
I'd have a hard time imagining flipping my kayak. I mean, I could easily fall out of it if I wasn't careful, but it's pretty dang stable unless something like goes wrong, where like hits a hole and starts taking on water or something. You know, some kayaks, you know, every kayak's different. Some of them are faster, lighter, but they might not be as stable. And you get out there in some big waves, and you got to be worried about it rolling you over, or, you know, flipping out there. I mean, every kayak's different, and they have advantages and disadvantages. But I'm speaking on what I have experience with, which I've got one of the biggest, most stable kayaks out there. But a lot of people are not fishing out of those. They're fishing out of smaller paddle kayaks that are, you know, designed to paddle easier, but they may, if you take a wave broadside, it might just flip you right over. So you definitely got to know your boat.
Mm-hmm. What batteries do you run?
I've got 2 different batteries. The battery that's dedicated for the trolling motor, I run an Amped Outdoors lithium that I got from Everhart's, and it's you know, 80 amp hours. I can run my I've never gotten lower than 25% on it. I've got a little battery gauge that I installed on it so I can keep charge of how many amps are being drawn. And I mean, I've gone as far as 10 miles round trip in a day and never gotten below 25%. But that's what I run for my trolling motor. And, you know, it only weighs, I think, 25 pounds, and it's, you know, size of a deep cycle battery. So for a kayaker, the lithium is definitely the way to go. I think they're about $600 for that battery, but so they're not cheap, but it's definitely kind of the way to go if you're gonna have a trolling motor on a kayak. And then as far as I got a separate battery for my electronics. I've got a yak power system that I use that has 5 different circuits, and I've got you know the red and green bow lights, which you have to have in Missouri if you got a motor on it, even though it's a kayak. And then I've also got my flag on the back that's got a 360 light on the back, just like a bass boat. And you know, so those are running off of the accessory battery. Then I've also got my fish finder runs off of that. Sometimes I'm running a fisheye camera off of it. I've also got a little charger port for my phone if I need it. And I've got a 17.5 amp hour lithium battery for that. And that I've never run it out. I've fished 10, 12 hours before and never run out of juice on that.
I'm checking out your kayak on Old Town's website. So
yeah,
that's pretty slick.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to see, like, they could go to my Facebook page, and if you scroll down a ways, I've got different, you know, you might have to go back a month or two, but I've got a lot of pictures of my kayak on there. So, and it kind of has how I have it set up, you know. I mean, I could go into detail, but people are amazed at how much I carry on there in the way of rods and tackle. I usually take 10 rods with me. I've got 2 6-gallon milk crates that I fill up with. I've got Plano edge boxes, and then also I use some big deep 3700 Plano boxes that are the open compartment ones, and that's what I keep my soft plastics in. And I usually take 3 or 4 of those full of plastics. And so I got all that on my kayak. Plus I got another box that I keep emergency items, spare prop, and extra fuses and all that kind of stuff. And so I carry a lot of stuff on there.
You're carrying just as much as we are in a John boat.
You got a fish cleaning station on there too? Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, I literally have just about, I mean, there's not much that I would have on my bass boat that I don't have on here. It's just I don't have as much. But it's amazing after you go through that painful downsizing of when I cleaned everything out of my Ranger and tried to figure out what I need, what I'm going to take and what I'm going to leave. You know, it takes a little soul searching, but after you go through that, it's amazing. I never am out, very rarely am I ever out there. There's something that I want that I don't have with me. So bass boat guys get in the habit of taking way more than what they need. And you see that as a co-angler. I mean, you got to downsize everything.
Yep.
And I mean, you got to be strategic, but you can, you know, you can get by with a lot less than what you think you need.
Well, you know, I had that conversation with my brother a couple years ago, and I would get on. You fished with my brother a lot. You know what he brings? He brings everything but the kitchen sink when he jumps in the boat with you. And it's like, you don't need 17 packs of black and blue chunks, do you? And he's like, well, I might run out. I'm like, tell me a day that you've gone through more than like 2 packs of chunks in your entire life. One day, and you blew through, you know, 20 chunks. And
probably one of the best days you ever had on the water.
Exactly. So you don't need all that stuff. I mean, and we're all guilty of it, right? I'm a hoarder. I'm an overpacker, and usually by midsummer, I'm going in my boat and going, oh crap, I've already got 5 of these in here. I didn't need to grab these from the tackle store, but well, I'll just throw them in here because I'm standing right here. And then by the end of the summer, you know, you got 30 extra pounds of tackle that you didn't need.
Well, the BFL Saturday at Table Rock, I used 2 3/16-ounce shaky heads. I lost one, so that's why I used 2, and I used 3 worms. That's all I used. That's
so you could have put what you needed in your pocket.
Well, I really downsized this year. I'm taking like one Plano 3700. I've got a little small duffel bag, fishing, you know, whatever box,
tackle bag.
Tackle bag. Thank you. But I put some soft plastics in the bottom of it. I put that 3,700 on top. And then above that, I've got room to put, 3 bottles of water, a sandwich, a couple protein bars. And then I put my GoPro chesty. And then I put my handheld camera on top of that. And then it has 2 side pockets where I'll put just maybe my sunglasses, some spike it pins, just a few kind of oddball stuff. But I've got plenty of room in that.
Right.
And I used to carry way more than that. You just don't need it. You don't have time to fish all that stuff. So, I mean, if you can get an idea of what you're going to be doing the day before you go out on the water, if you talk to your boater, or if you are a boater and you've been fishing, you kind of got an idea of what's going on. You can really downsize. And that goes for co-anglers. That goes for kayaks as well. Like you said earlier, you don't need.
And it goes for boaters too.
Yeah, it goes for boaters too.
I mean, what was it, Christie last year? He took out everything out of his boat except for like 3 spinnerbaits and 4 rods or something crazy that he had rigged up to make that run.
Yes,
to get back
because he needed every ounce of fuel.
And he came back and he had like a half a gallon of fuel left. So same thing happens there, and he won the tournament. So,
yeah. Well, and John Cox, a buddy of mine, Frank, who fishes as a co-angler on the Bassmaster Opens and also has fished the Toyota series, and he drew John Cox one day. John Cox shows up with 3 rods and a paper sack full of some Berkeley Max Scent stuff, and maybe a Fritz side or 2 crankbaits. Because I think it was last year when he was doing all those tournaments, and he didn't have most of his stuff was somewhere else. So he literally showed up with like $200 worth of tackle,
a Walmart bag and a couple rods.
And I think he had a top 10 in the tournament. But not everybody's John Cox, like today I took like 14 rods off my John boat.
Yeah, but
I only ended up throwing a spinnerbait most of the day.
I was gonna say, at the end of the day, how much better of anglers would we be if we didn't take 10 rods and we did the 1 man, 1 rod, 1 bait challenge,
just focused
on that 1 bait. And I think that's where we lose sight as we'll call us outboard anglers or boaters versus kayakers versus bank fishermen versus pond fishermen. We can go all the way down to, when we were kids and we were walking in the creek, right? You had an opportunity to fish this section of the creek because that's all you were granted access.
You weren't tall enough to wade any further.
Exactly. And you caught fish in that section of the creek, or you had one little half-acre pond that you could fish in their subdivision when you were growing up. That's all you had there, but you made the best of it. You had a pack of worms in one pocket, and you had a spinnerbait in the other pocket, and you had 1 rod, and you went down there and you made a day out of it. We've gotten to the point now where, and I'm not going to sell all my stuff and take 1 rod to the lake, for goodness sakes, but we're all guilty of it. I mean, we could be a heck of a lot better fishermen if we just concentrate on 1 bait or 1 area.
It's part of the art of fishing, though. When you have a passion for something, you get into it more. You learn the different nuances and the different techniques, and each technique has a whole new supply of things.
Right, just like live scope.
Yeah, just like live scope. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing how spread out you can get, but it usually comes back to center, like soft plastics colors. It always comes back to green pumpkin and Junebug or black. You can go out there, and then you usually come back to those like 5 different colors. Like a jig. It's like a black and blue jig and a brown and purple jig and a green pumpkin. It seems like it always kind of comes back to that.
Well, if you look at every color of jigs that you just mentioned, or every color, they all kind of have a base off of that. It's just to catch you and I and Chad, not to catch the little green and brown fish that we fish.
I think it's how you work it, where you put it at, and
if the fish is hungry.
Confidence. It's finding the fish is the whole deal. Really.
Oliver's got a great question though, and this is something that I've wondered.
Yeah, he says, what's the relationship between boaters and kayak anglers? Have you ever had any negative run-in while fishing in the same area as a boater?
So personally, I have not had any problems. I'm not going to say I haven't been cut off, but I got cut off in the bass boat too. So I just feel like, kayakers are just people, and bass boat guys are just people. I think you're going to get bass boaters that are a-holes, and you're going to get kayakers that are a-holes, and it's just the same to me. But I mean, I don't have any trouble. I feel like maybe some boaters don't give kayakers the respect. Like they're more likely to cut them off than they would be a bass boat. I think maybe sometimes that's true. I don't feel like I've had any real problems though. I can only think of like one time that I just like blatantly got cut off, like I wasn't even there. And I kind of feel like they would have probably done that if I was on a bass boat too. But I mean, we do have on the water confrontations. I hear about it. I just heard about one recently in one of the Hobie tournaments where literally a bass boat guy rammed a kayaker on the water with his bass boat, and then he picked the wrong kayaker. They ended up on the dock, and the way I understand it, the kayaker whooped his butt. But that stuff is going to happen. That happens between boaters, and I think new kayakers, people that are just getting into it, need to be aware that at the boat ramps especially, not to block the ramp. And we talk about that. I mean, I feel like it's pretty well known. Most kayakers are very conscientious about staying out of the way of boaters using the ramp, and not blocking it and stuff like that. I don't know. It's probably going to become more and more of an issue as our kayak tournaments are getting pretty big, and when we have kayak tournaments at the same time as a big bass boat tournament, maybe it might be frustrating for the bass boater if there's like a bunch of kayakers in an area that they want to fish. And I don't know. I think there's going to be issues at times, but I think there's going to be issues no matter what. Just on the water, as more and more people are using it.
Hey, that's no different than a jackpot tournament going out of a ramp at Chickamauga the same weekend that the Elite Series is there, and there's Jim Bob and his John boat sitting on the hole that Swindle ran 30 miles to get to, and what are you going to do about it? Nothing. You're just going to keep on rolling on. I think, and I'll defend kayak guys, the kayak anglers, I don't think are the problem. I think it's the kayakers, just the pleasure kayakers, that are the problems on the lakes that I've had faced with. I mean, I've had them.
I've seen that.
You'd be fishing down the bank, and all of a sudden they just, not a care in the world, they just go between you and where you're casting at.
Well,
yep. They're just kind of oblivious.
The kayaker and the glass boat guy getting in an argument. If you're a big burly kayaker, you could actually pick up your kayak and beat that guy to death
with your kayak.
With your kayak. I mean, it's actually a weapon if you're strong enough to get it out of the water.
Hold on. Let's be honest. If you're a kayaker and you've been paddling or pedaling,
yeah, you got some upper body strength.
No offense, Chad, but if you've been paddling or pedaling all day long, you got a little bit of gumption to you. Let me tell you. And I wouldn't want to get out on the dock with somebody.
Yeah, that's no joke. It's a very physically demanding for those guys that are doing people-powered kayaks all day long and fishing. It's
right.
Yeah.
Heck, no, I think we all want the sport to grow, right? And this is the new way that the sport is growing. When I was growing up, it was in the John boat going to the glass boat, and then I went back to the John boat. But we all have responsibility to not be the a-hole at the boat ramp and say, hey, man, can I help you out here? Is this one of your first times backing in, or, help a guy out that's maybe struggling at the boat ramp to get his kayak in and kind of show him the ropes. I mean, I've been at the boat ramp many times and been frustrated, as everybody has been, when the kayak guy leaves his kayak sitting there, sideways on the ramp, and his truck parked right next to it, and nobody can get down the ramp, and it's 3 wide to get down the ramp. It's like, come on, bud, you just pull off to the side and, I'll be fine with it, but don't load up and strap on. But we have that problem with the John boat guys. We have that with the bass boat guys, the guy that parks sideways across the ramp. So it's not just the kayak guys. It's just the easy target is the kayak guy, right? Because he doesn't look like us. He doesn't have a $70,000 rig or a 16-foot John boat that's all tricked out. He's got just a little bath toy out there. You know, I think that's the big consensus of it.
Did you see that picture that Hammy posted on Facebook? It was like 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
So there's a local lake. It's an 1800 lake. It's a 10 horsepower limit lake. There's 2-lane boat ramp. Apparently, one of the locals that was bank fishing, she decides to park her vehicle right on one of the lanes of the boat ramp. And she's got her rods laid out. She's got her sack lunch laid out, drinks, cooler. And she's just sitting there on the boat ramp, on one side of the boat ramp, just catfishing or whatever. That was a classic picture.
Yeah.
That was classic.
You got
to, what can you do? What can you do? Stephanie wants to know the entry fees. Are entry fees cheaper for kayak tournaments versus, glass boat tournaments, I guess, or John boat tournaments?
I think for the most part, entry fees are pretty comparable to bass boat tournaments. The entry fee for like Moyak, I think is around $45. Which to me is comparable to like a local bass club. And then like the All-American series that I've been fishing, it's a 2-day tournament. It's more like a Midwest regional series. Entry fee is $175. I think I fished some of the Bassmaster kayak tournaments. They're $250. The Hobies are a little bit more even. That's pretty much the highest. I think I paid $400 to fish the national championship for Bassmaster last year. So when you get up to like Elite Series where they're paying thousands of dollars, kayaks don't get up to that level. But as far as all the other levels, like what's a BFL now, like a few $100 for the boater. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's pretty comparable to fishing like a Bassmaster kayak tournament or a Hobie or something like that. So yeah. But if you just want to fish, like your local stuff, I mean, a lot of the thing about the kayak tournaments is, there's all kinds of extra things, there's, your regular entry fee, then you got big bass, and then we do like a special deal called trash fish pot. So like if you catch a big drum or something, you can enter that. And then we have a team portion also, which is a separate entry fee if you want to pair up with another kayaker and you combine your scores. So then you got the team portion of it. And because we're submitting our fish, taking a picture and submitting it online, we can actually fish. A lot of times we're fishing 4 or 5 different tournaments at the same time. When we were at Table Rock, we were fishing the Moyak event, the All-American Kayak Series event, the Arkansas Club. I was fishing an online tournament, a monthly online, the team tournament. So you're submitting fish to all these tournaments. The same fish is going to all these tournaments at the same time. And so when you start adding all that up, the entry fees really add up, but you can do as much or as little as what you want to.
Man, we were way behind on these comments. Look at this.
Where are we?
This is 8:12 and it's 8:45. We
Oh,
can catch up on some of these. Stephanie says, how fast do you have to be moving for side scan to work? Typically like about 4 miles an hour is about perfect for
4 to 5 gives you your best picture.
Right.
Yeah, in the kayak, my max speed is about 4 mile per hour with the trolling motor. I'm usually side scanning at around 2 or 3 mile per hour, but that's just because that's about how fast I go. It seems to work okay. It may not be optimal, but
everything that I've read and I've had side scan for years, but I get the best picture where it's not stretched out, or you kind of got an idea what that structure looks like, and at 7, 8, 9 mile an hour, it's kind of distorted, and at 2 or 3 mile an hour, it's just really spread out.
Yeah, 4 to 5.
4 to 5 is about where I keep mine at.
Yeah. So we've got this question twice. Jay Beffa asked it, and then Justin's asking, have you ever fell out of your kayak?
Well, no, I have not. So I mean, my kayak's stable. I'm short. I have a low center of gravity. I've had a couple my biggest problem is sometimes I'll have my trolling motor on like 10, the highest speed, and then I'll stop and I'll be fishing and I'll forget that it's on the highest speed and I'm standing up, and then I hit the button to go again, and the trolling motor is pointing sideways and it'll about throw me out of the boat, and I'll kind of a controlled fall backwards into the seat to keep from falling out of the boat. That's the closest I've had, but I haven't fallen out yet, so I've been lucky.
And it's more about getting used to it, right? I mean, going from a John boat to the big boat. I remember you and I fished down at Kentucky, and then we came back and we jumped in like a Lake of Egypt tournament. And I jumped in your boat that morning, and I hit the boat, and I about just kept on going and fell in the water because it wasn't stable. Especially in your old John boat, as stable as a 21-foot glass boat. But you gotta learn where to fall, right? If you do fall, you got to know kind of what direction to go. Same way in any boat, right? If you fall in our John boats, you want to fall in the center of the boat. You don't want to fall left or right.
No,
you gotta be kind of learning setting the hook, not to like lean too much back into it, where you're gonna flip backwards out or stuff like that. But you get used to it. I mean, at this point I've spent hundreds of hours fishing out of the kayak, so it becomes second nature. But but yeah, and every kayak's different. Some aren't as stable, but so far I've been lucky.
Barry has a good one here. What
I like this one. Danny Johnson says he was chasing gators on Lake Fork this weekend, but they were scared. He pumped them out.
What PFD do you wear?
So I wear an inflatable. It's a Hobie.
Okay.
Inflatable. I like it because I got it when I bought that Hobie, which I sold, but I kept the PFD, and it's got a pocket, which we use our phones a lot while we're out there taking pictures, and so I've got a lanyard that attaches. It's got a good clip that I can attach my lanyard to the phone, and then it's got a pocket that I can put the phone in, zip it up, and then it's also got a good place to clip my remote on the other side. And I've had a hard time finding inflatable PFDs that have the pocket and the rings and stuff to attach everything. For some reason, I've looked and they don't make like the auto inflatables. They just don't make them with the pockets and stuff in them like as much as you would think they would. I don't know. Somebody needs to design one for kayakers. But
now, are you required to wear your life jacket the entire time?
Absolutely. It's one of the rules. We 100% of the time while we're out there, we have to have it on. The only exception is like if you got to strip down, take your jacket off or something like that. Most of the time they'll allow you to stop fishing, stop motoring or whatever you're doing, and take your PFD off, shed whatever layers or whatever, put your PFD right back on, then you can start fishing again or whatever. But they're pretty strict about that.
Now, is that state law or is that kayak?
I don't think it's state law, but it's in every kayak tournament. It's in their rules. Okay. That's very strict.
I didn't think it was a Missouri state law, but I'm not a kayak guy, so.
Yeah, I mean, I see pleasure kayakers out there without PFDs, but it's not very smart. Stuff can happen quick. And I mean, I was at Lake of the Ozarks just at my dad's place weekend before last. Water temps still like, I think it was like mid to high 50s, and it was pretty rough out there. And there was a couple young girls out in a couple pleasure kayaks, and stuff happens and you don't realize how, especially when you're wearing heavy clothes and stuff, how quickly you can get in trouble.
For sure.
Yeah, Phil was just saying that Ray Scott passed today. Yep. Saw that. I didn't see that. So that's sad news, man. What a big, huge influence in tournament bass fishing. So
absolutely.
Condolences out to the Scott family. So John says, Chad, you also hit the rivers and streams around the state. Would you prefer ton paddle or use power?
Two paddle.
Would you? Okay, yeah. Two paddle. Or use power when float fishing or on float trips?
Yeah, so I do. That's been something that's been something that's been a big learning curve for me. Is it's a big part of Moyak and some of these kayak tournaments. They actually have separate river series events where they fish rivers like the Gasconade or the Merrimack, or all over Missouri. Missouri has some of the best scenic riverways in the country, full of smallmouth and great fishing and beautiful. And it's a whole nother deal fishing those rivers. And my autopilot kayak is not suited for rivers and moving water. It's too heavy. It's not maneuverable. A lot of times you're in super shallow areas and the trolling motor wouldn't help you. And so I actually I've got a paddle kayak. It's a New Canoe Flint that's lightweight, 10-foot long. It's a good paddling kayak, still pretty stable. And I've been using that on the rivers, and I don't really like paddling because you're constantly having to paddle and try and position yourself and fish, and it's hard to do. It's a definite skill that's acquired, and I respect people that are good at it. I'm not that good at it, but most of the time that's what I'm fishing out of if I'm on a river. I would like to get a pedal. I'm looking at some pedal kayaks for the river. They make some smaller pedal ones that are still good for paddling. They're maneuverable, but you also have a pedal drive. So if you're on those long pools of deeper water, you can pedal and you're not wearing yourself out paddling, or you can hold yourself in current and still fish, stuff like that. So those are the options on the rivers.
So your current kayak isn't a pedal drive?
My second one, the Flint,
Yeah,
it's just a paddle. It doesn't have a pedal drive. You just have to use a paddle.
Cool. Because Josh was asking, he says he paddles a bona fide SS107. Are the pedal drives on the Old Town pretty durable?
I've heard good things about them. I've never owned one, but I've heard really good things. I know people that have used them rigorously, and I think they're a good pedal drive.
Okay. Yeah, Larry says you have as much stuff in his kayak as you do in a bass boat. He says he knows because he's seen it firsthand.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I talk about downsizing and how much I've downsized, but I am still probably the top 5% of kayakers as far as the amount of stuff I bring. I've got a huge Rubbermaid tote that I put in the back of my truck when I go to big tournaments that has all my backup plastics and hard baits and stuff just in case. And I'm still carrying way more stuff on my kayak than a lot of the kayakers. So it's kind of funny. I'm sure they're laughing at me talking about how much I've downsized, because I still carry a lot more than a lot of them do, but it's hard. It's a process. I'm still getting there.
What's up, Eric? Good to see you on here, man. Good to see you on here. Hey, we hit 80 there, so we're people are sharing it. That's good. Keep it going.
Love it. I just think back of all those. You talk about creek fishing and stream fishing. Think about all those times that I've waded streams in Southeast Missouri and wished that I had just a little kayak to get across that hole, because I really don't want to swim today, or I really don't want to get up on that chigger and tick infested bank just to walk around this deep hole. But man, you got me wanting to buy one. But I have that same respect for you on the paddling, because I don't have kayaks. I have layout boats for duck hunting, which are wider than yours. They're 4 foot wide, super, super stable, low profile. But I paddle those around in my pond in the backyard for crappie fishing and bass fishing. But if it's blowing anything over 10 or 15 mile an hour, if the wind's swirling, it is a nightmare. I mean, just you're one end of the lake to the other in about 3 seconds from the gust of wind. So I carry an anchor, an old school, drop an anchor and tie off and just sit out and fish. So
yeah.
So okay, Stephanie says, how much have you taken out of your boat since downsizing with the BFLs? So we can all touch on this. So the problem is, I actually went through my boat about 3 weeks ago. So we were actually probably a month ago, transitioning from like the winter into the spring. I start taking a lot of my jerk baits out. I still keep a few. You start adding some topwater baits into the mix. kind of go heavy on the moving baits, the chatter baits and spinner baits and swim jigs and stuff like that. A few more plastics, maybe a few less jigs. So I got it all organized. But the problem I have is I'll see a couple packs of something, a new color plastic or a new shape or something, and I'll put those in there. And then a week later, I'll put a couple more packs in there. Next thing you know, after a month and a half, you got a whole bunch of extra stuff in there. So you almost have to go through your boat about every month or 2 months. But I tell you what, today I got on a good spinnerbait bite. And I was throwing a certain color spinnerbait, 3/8 ounce spinnerbait in a certain color. And I broke it off on about a 4-pound bass. I saw him roll up and I set the hook. And it was my fault. I didn't retie. I'd already hooked several before that. And I didn't have my spinnerbaits in my boat because before I went to Table Rock, I had taken them out and I was going through and just I picked out like 3 or 4 spinnerbaits, put them on my tackle bag. Well, I left my spinnerbaits on my workbench and I forgot to throw them back in my boat before I took off to the lake. So I had 2 spinnerbaits that were close to what I needed, but they weren't close enough because they didn't work. They were too small. The blade size, there was some big gizzard shad up in the grass, and they wanted that like size 5 or so willow leaf. The spinnerbait that I had like a size 4, and it doesn't sound like much, but I only got one more bite after that. It didn't make a difference. So
it probably was a little bit.
There's a balance between taking too much stuff out of your boat and then make sure you have the stuff that you might need. And I didn't have the stuff that I needed today. So,
well, I tell you what, the hardest thing for me fishing the co-angler side of the BFLs was going back and forth. So have a BFL on a Saturday and have a club tournament on Sunday where you got to jump back in your boat.
Yeah, exactly.
Where you're bouncing tackle back and forth. I should have been able to, with all the tackle that I have, which I never did this, but I should have a dedicated co-angler bag and just don't ever touch anything that's in the boat. But you and I both know that's not going to happen because there's always that one bait or that one box that you always take with you. For me, it was my jig box. What I did though, Stephanie, for my tackle, instead of carrying the 3,700 boxes, I now carry the 36, the smaller boxes. And that's what I put in my boat. I have my boat completely arranged with the smaller tackle boxes. So I've downsized, instead of carrying a giant box full of frogs, I carry a smaller box full of frogs. Because typically I don't tie on but 1 or 2 different frogs throughout a day.
So you only need a black, a white, and an orange.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Stephanie, I think any vessel that is on the water after sunset or before sunrise is required to have navigational lights. And Jonathan can tell you that
put your navigational lights on at sunset.
Yeah, we got surprised by the game warden coming back
30 minutes before sunset or whatever. Put them on when it starts getting dark.
Yeah, he got what was that, $160 ticket?
Yeah, it was up there.
Yeah.
And I know the exact date, December 19th, because we were the only suckers on the lake that day.
Yeah, and we were idling back, and it was still light out.
And it was like
5 minutes after
35 degrees outside.
Yeah, it was 5 minutes after official sunset, or 6 minutes or something. 6 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, he said, "Well, I would have let you slide 5 minutes, but 6 minutes, that's over the line." And I'm like, "We can see."
We idled for probably 3/4 of a mile.
Yeah, we were fishing this point right outside the boat ramp. I mean, we're within sight of the boat ramp, and we idled. And anyway, yeah. So nav lights, man, put them on. I always put my nav lights on.
After that, I do.
Yeah. It's just not.
Yeah, kayakers are basically, if you've got a motor like an electric motor, you got to have the same lights as a bass boat. You got to have the red and green front lights, and then you got to have the 360 light on the back. But if you're just a kayak with, basically man powered, I think you just have to have that 360 light. But you definitely want to have it.
I would recommend having it at all, just because of safety. I mean, I couldn't imagine, it's hard enough to see somebody that decides to shut off all their lights at night, much less a kayak, early morning, late evening. Make sure you got your stuff on, because I'm sure Chad can attest to this. I'd much rather be in a 21-foot boat if I'm out there in the middle of the night or early morning hours and somebody's running down the lake than in a kayak. Because if they hit you in a kayak, toast. So
Yeah.
stay illuminated, and so people know where you're at.
Here's a good question from Oliver, and this is kind of something I wrote down. We can touch on this. For someone in the kayak that may not have the luxury of standing up for most of that day, what lure specific techniques do you find that kind of handicap the angler? Are there some things that they're really hard to do out of a kayak versus, you know, a bass boat?
I mean, I may not be the best one to ask because I don't have a ton of experience fishing sitting down, but when I did it, I really screwed up my shoulder when I had that Hobie because I was throwing, it was in the wintertime and I was throwing the A-rig a lot. And I was sitting down throwing the A-rig, and anybody that's throwing the A-rig much knows that it's bad enough when you're standing up using your whole body. But if you're just using your shoulders to whip that thing all day, it actually screwed up my shoulder. But I mean, I think anything like, I mean, to me, an advantage of standing up is that you can, when you present your baits, I'm able to present them better, like as far as a soft landing. You know, if you're flipping and pitching, or if you're like roll casting and stuff, it's easier for me to do that more accurately while I'm standing up. I also feel like I get a better hook set. I know that kayakers sitting down, I feel like maybe sometimes they don't get as good of a hook set because you're basically having to lean back into it. But when you set the hook in a kayak, you're actually pulling the whole kayak towards the fish. You lose some of your leverage, you know, because it actually, you start moving towards the fish. And you know, I think you can do all of those things sitting down. I mean, you can, I know guys that are really good at basically pitching by doing little roll casts and stuff out of the kayak and stuff. So you can do all of it. It's just you got to find what works for you. But I may not be the best one to talk about the specifics on sitting down because I just don't do it. But
well,
I'd say punching would be tough.
You made a good point though. Like I was just thinking about the angle. So if you're sitting down, your angle is fairly steep, right? Or not steep at all. It's more 180, and you're going to be pulling towards that fish. If you're standing up, at least if you're within range, it's still just like in a boat, you have more of a direct angle and you're pulling that fish up instead of at you. So
yeah, and I mean, I just when I set the hook, I'm basically using my whole body and like kind of rotating, and I feel like I'm maybe moving that rod tip further than somebody who's sitting down and just pulling back on it. And I mean, it seems like I hear fairly frequently from kayakers that they lose fish. And I mean, everybody loses some fish, but I feel like I maybe don't lose as many fish as some people do. And I attribute part of that to maybe I'm just getting better hook sets just because I'm standing up. But that's just my own theory. But
I would agree with that. My buddy Jerry has a little small 10-foot John boat that we go out in his pond and we just sit, and he has a paddle, and it is so hard to set the hook. I mean, I can set the hook like a spinning rod, wacky rig type of thing. But if I'm throwing something like a Texas rig where I really got to put the meat to it,
something that's in your left hand, basically.
Yeah, I lose half of the.
You know, with right hand, you can go up with it,
which is how I fish my
spinning rod. You can go up with it.
Yeah.
With that, you can't go up with it because you're going to just
break
down all your mechanics.
But I'm sitting down, so that makes sense. Standing up, you get a lot more leverage.
This is a question that I had, but Joey beat me to it.
Do you miss having a co-angler, or do you enjoy fishing by yourself?
Yeah, she pretty much nailed it. That's probably one of my biggest things that I miss about having the bass boat is being able to take somebody with me, whether it be my bass boat buddies that I don't really get to fish with anymore, or like my daughter or my wife or whatever. You know, I mean, you can definitely go fishing with other kayakers, and they take their kayak and you take yours, and you kind of fish together like you would out of a bass boat. But the people that I used to fish with that don't kayak fish, I miss fishing with those people. And that's probably one of my biggest things about not having the bass boat that I miss. I actually was recently talking, my dad's got a place at Lake of the Ozarks, and he's got a small little basically a wave runner slip in his dock that's not being used right now. And we measured it just like last weekend, and I think I could fit like a 17-foot, like a bass tracker type bass boat in there. And so I've actually thought about maybe getting a small bass boat just for that reason, to like be able to take family members or go out fishing with friends and stuff, because I do miss that.
White Whale's got another question here. What advice or tips do you have for kayak anglers that have never fished a tournament but want to?
Well, I mean, Moyak is a great place to start. You know, it's intimidating. I know it is. I mean, it wasn't bad for me because I'd been fishing tournaments out of a bass boat, but for somebody who's never fished a tournament at all, you just got to start. You got to start somewhere, and it's going to be a learning curve, and you can't get frustrated. There's a ton of good resources like on the Moyak website about all the things you need to fish a kayak tournament. Some really great people. That's one of the things. I had some great friends in the bass boat world, but I've gained a lot of new friends in the kayak world, and there's some really good people willing to help. And by fishing these tournaments, you're going to be around all these people. They're going to help you. You talk to people, and you're going to start learning. There's a lot of good resources out there on how to fish kayak tournaments, and you know, you're going to have to do some research and find out all the things that you need. But don't be intimidated. Just get out there and start doing it, and you're just going to have to eat it for a while, because you're not going to probably cash many checks. But I mean, I went for 10 years in Ozark Mountain Anglers before I ever won a tournament. And, you know, it was just paying your dues, putting in your time. Fishing is a difficult sport. And, you know, it takes a lot of time on the water before you really start to feel like, you know, maybe every time you think you got it figured out, you don't. But I feel more like I kind of know what to do when I go out there now. But that's after 30 years of doing this. So just get started and do it. And I talked to somebody tonight that messaged me. I think he made a message on there a few minutes ago, Clint Averett, or I apologize if I butchered your name, but he was asking me that same question. And I asked him if he was going to fish the next Moyak tournament. And he said, no, I'm not ready for that level yet. And my response was, well, I mean, that's the only way that you're going to learn, is to get out there and do it. So that would be my advice, to just jump in.
I mean, that's how we were with the BFLs, right?
Yeah, you just got to get in there, get your feet wet.
Just got to jump in.
Get your feet wet. I mean, that's one of the things about having a YouTube channel. And you know, I always I try to keep it real. You know, everybody goes out there and doesn't catch them on some days. You know, fishing the BFLs as a co-angler, there's tournaments where I'll zero, but I'll still try to put some kind of video together and just put it out there, because that's the reality of not only tournament fishing, that's the reality of just going fishing. They don't always bite. You don't always figure it out. And that's part of the learning process. Some of the best learning days are days when you don't catch them and you sit there and ponder, like the drive home, coming back from Table Rock, 5-hour drive home, when you zero as a co-angler. You got a lot of time to think about it. And I know you're not in control, but there's times when I'll fish a tournament where I wasn't, you know, fishing out of the front of the boat and we didn't catch them good. So you hash it all out, and you know, come up with a game plan, go out there, and maybe, you know, the more you do it, the more you get in sync with what's going on. But the reality of it is you're going to have tough tournaments. You're going to have tough days on the water. And that's just part of the learning. There's nothing wrong with that, man. Even the best people, the best fishermen in the world, they don't catch them all the time. They don't catch them a lot of times.
What does Hellbass say? Suck less?
Suck less. Yeah. I mean, that's just the reality of it. It's, you know, I watch all these guys at Lake of the Ozarks, the sticks, man, the hammers. They have some good tournaments, and they still have all the names that you know, they still have some bad tournaments. They have some low finishes. That's just the way it is. But you got to get out there and you got to get your feet wet.
Unfortunately, the YouTube, and not necessarily you, but just YouTube in general, has taught us fishing shows when we were growing up have taught us that, you know, Bill Dance goes out and he catches them on a dancing eel every time he goes out fishing and just catches the fire out of them every cast. Well, I know how much it takes to put a video together. You definitely know how much time it takes to put a video together. That video that you put together, you may have 5 fish catches throughout the entire day, and you had a great day. You succeeded with what you wanted to do, but it's not always you don't catch 30 fish.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, that's just
in
the way
4
it is.
hours. So
and that's the way tournaments are. They're the same. They're the same way. But like I was saying. Go ahead, Chad.
I'm sorry. I also wanted to point out there is another club in Missouri too, called Kayak Anglers of Missouri, and it's a smaller club. It's I would say maybe it might be geared a little bit more for like beginning anglers. It's like their boat numbers are a lot smaller. They probably only average, I don't know, 20 people in a tournament or something like that, and so that's just another option too. I wanted to go ahead and mention that because if it's intimidating for you, I mean, Moyak's a great club and I absolutely love it. But if going out with 150 boats is intimidating for you, maybe you might check out Kayak Anglers in Missouri. They also have tournaments. It's a lot smaller, a little bit more of a personal feel in some respects. So that's another option.
That's an excellent point. I mean, we started out fishing Bass Club, with 10 members. Did that for a long time before we even started fishing the BFLs or, the Toyota series or the Costa and stuff. So that's a great point. Start out in a little bit smaller club and get a feel for it, get a feel of how it's ran, how to manage time and how to make decisions on the water. It's a lot of fun though. It's really a lot of fun. If you got a little bit of a competitive edge in you get that out of your system and you make a lot of friends. You meet a lot of really cool people fishing the tournaments. That's the thing that I really enjoy more than anything is just making new friends, man. Just you get 100 people that are all passionate about a single topic. And if people can put their ego aside for a little bit, and a lot of that is people that do it longer and longer, they kind of put their ego aside and then you enjoy the actual camaraderie of like-minded people gathering for an event and chasing a passion together. And that's one of the things I really like the most about the BFLs is that right there. A couple of people mentioned a jerkbait and some kind of top water, something where you're walking the dog is being kind of difficult. Sitting down, and that makes total sense. You don't have anywhere for that rod to go.
Yeah.
I guess you have to go sideways with that twitching action.
Well, with that in mind, what are some of your key baits that you've either switched to or that you like fishing out of a kayak?
Yeah, or some of the key baits that have been successful this year for you in tournament fishing.
Yeah. Well, I told you before we started, I got a bunch of baits laid out here, so maybe this would be a good time to just
let's look at them, man. We love looking at baits, definitely.
So
you can put him on. I'm gonna go to the back.
You probably know I'm sponsored by Crank Wraps, and this here, this is a Fritz side, a Berkeley Fritz side 5, and I've wrapped that with a Cajun crank wrap.
Okay.
And I actually caught them really good on my second day at Kentucky Lake on this exact bait right here. I was throwing it to the back corner of docks and cranking it down, and they were hammering it. So that's one bait.
What color was that originally, Chad?
I think it was a crawfish, and it had like some orange. I think it was might have been orange with like a yellow or something like that. I don't even remember, but
okay.
The thing about the crank wraps is they don't completely cover the top and the bottom.
Okay.
So when I'm wrapping a bait, a lot of times I kind of think about what's going to show and if that's going to blend into the wrap that I'm using. And
right.
I wrapped it with this Cajun wrap just because it was so realistic, and I really like the bright red. But it still shows that orange belly, and I feel like it blends in really well. So
for sure, I really like that. So
I like that coffee.
I mean, another one of my favorites is this 2.5 square bill, and this I actually won the Truman event for Moyak last year on this bait right here, and this is just a 2.5 square bill with the bluegill wrap on it. And I mean, it's just an ultra realistic finish on there, and it doesn't chip off or wear off, so it's going to last a long time.
I like the hooks that you got on there. Those are some gangster hooks. So
yeah, man, get the big ones on there.
Heck yeah. Are those fours, twos or fours?
I think these are twos.
Okay.
If I remember right. So another one of my favorites, and we'll just stick with the crank wraps here for a minute. This is just a regular. This isn't actually a mega bass. This is one of the RC sticks, but it's a 110 type jerkbait, and this is Fishback Attack is the name of this color, and it's kind of similar. I would throw it a lot of times when I would throw a bone, but that blue head and you know, it looks really good in the water, and I found it works good in like a dingy water, but it also works really good in clear water. And so, I mean, it's pretty versatile. And something else that's like going on right now with the spawn, something I love to throw around the spawn. This is actually a floating jerkbait. This is one of the old Smithwick Rogues. It's a floating rogue, and it's got the rattles in it. But I've wrapped that in a sunfish wrap.
We don't have to talk about that.
You can,
we don't talk about that.
You twitch this thing around spawning areas, and you like twitch it and then just pause it, and it just kind of floats up, and then you twitch it a couple more times. I'll actually let it just like break the surface of the water and then twitch it down again. So it's almost like working like a topwater bait, but it's below the surface, and they'll actually, I mean, I've caught some really big ones on that. And this is the same deal, but this is a white crappie, which is another great color.
Yeah, I love that.
Works really well.
Crappie color crank wraps. They did a really good job on that.
So since you exploited that all the way out of the water, there's another good thing to do in the fall on a cloudy day is high stick it on like 6 or 8 pound mono on a spinning rod. It's got to be slick calm.
So wake it almost?
Wake it. You can use it as like a long A or one of those and wake it. Oh, it's deadly. Absolutely deadly.
Oh, I bet that does work good. Do you guys ever throw a chug bug?
Yeah, that's one of my favorites the last couple of years.
Oh yeah.
So this is a chug bug that I wrapped with a sunfish wrap, and you know, you can still see the orange belly, which the belly's obviously what they're seeing. But I think, you know, as you're working it, man, that's just like one of the most realistic finishes I've seen on a topwater. But this is one of my favorites too.
Is that orange belly part of the crank wrap itself?
No, the orange belly is actually the original finish.
How does the crank wrap work? Actually, is it tape kind of, or is it got adhesive on it, or?
Yeah. So basically. Well, let me find one here. Well, so like, this is a wrap for like just a half ounce, like a red eye shad.
Okay.
And then you can see that they're like custom templated for specific baits, and they're just basically like a sticker, a decal. You peel it off, you line up the eye, and then you kind of center the tail, and you just kind of work it on there. And press it on, and it just sticks, and it sticks really good. And you know, there's some little tricks, like if you get a little wrinkle or something, you take a little bit of a lighter and put a little heat on it and work the wrinkles out. And then, you know, sometimes, you know, you got like that, they don't make one for that chug bug. And what I did is I took a jerkbait wrap and I trimmed it down, just kind of drew like an outline with a marker and trimmed it with scissors, and then made it fit that chug bug. So, you know, you got a lot of flexibility, and they've got, I don't even know how many, I think around 80 or 100 at least different baits that you can that are custom templated, and tons of different styles and stuff. So, I mean, you can go to crankwraps.com and check out all the different ones that they have. But I mean, for like around $5, you can wrap a couple baits. And if you compare that to a custom paint job, that's going to chip off over time and everything. You can do this. Like I keep this bag of wraps, which I don't know, I've probably got a few dozen wraps in here. I keep them in my kayak, and then you know, if you're on the water and you don't have the exact bait, it's like almost like these things are made for kayakers, because if you don't have, you can't carry every bait of every color with you. But if you have the bait, but it's not the color you want, you can wrap it on the water. I mean, it only takes a couple minutes, and you can make color changes on the fly. You know, they got wiggle warts and rock crawlers and, you know, 6XDs and spoons and spook wraps and whopper ploppers. I mean, you name it, they got all kinds of them. So it's a pretty cool deal. And it's fun to play with, like an art project, you know. So it's something just fun to tinker around with. And then
okay, hold on 1 second. I gotta address this. So this is my buddy Dave Holm, and I have to give credit where credit's due. I had fished a chug bug a lot 15 years ago, and I got away from it. And then the last couple of years, Dave has reintroduced me to the chug bug, and he's like a chug bug junkie, if there is such things. He actually gets on eBay and looks for certain
original chug
looks
bugs.
for, like people do with wiggle warts. He's like the chug bug guy, but you know, so
yeah.
So
I do have a.
Do I ever throw a chug bug?
I do have a chug bug story though.
Do you?
So I didn't realize that chug bugs were the price that they are. Not that those are super expensive, right? They're what, $7-8?
Yeah. They're a little higher than I thought they were.
Yeah, exactly. So, my son, I had a chug bug laying around, never threw it, didn't really think about it, and he was 2 or 3 at the time. Took the hooks off of it. It's a perfect little casting weight, right? He drug that thing around for like 1.5 years, and I'm like, I just put $8 on the end of a 2-year-old's pole to drag around and scuff up and beat up. All the hook hangers are all mangled up and bent in from him throwing it around the garage. It's like, that was a bad decision. I should have just taken one of the old crankbaits that had no bill left on it.
Yeah, you should have went to Academy and bought one of the H2Os or whatever.
Exactly.
Now you can straighten out the little hook hangers, and you can slap a crank wrap on there, and it'll be like new again.
There you go.
Man.
There you go.
Nice.
Brand new. Speaking of that, do you do any prep work on those baits before you put it on there?
No, I mean, I don't. No, I mean, I don't. That adhesive that's on there, it sticks really good. I mean, it might not be a bad idea to just take like a little alcohol, and if it was like dirty, if you've been using it, or you know, you wouldn't hurt to clean it. But honestly, I don't hardly ever do anything. I just stick it on there. Now, if you put it on there and it's on there for a while, you can peel it off, and it'll leave a little bit of a residue behind. I use WD-40 and on a rag and just rub it on there, and it takes that adhesive right off. You know, if you don't peel it off, I mean, they stick on there pretty dang good.
So what else you got for us back there? You got anything
else?
Well,
I was going to switch gears here. So items that I recommended to Joey that are some of my favorites for the giveaway. This was the first on the list, and now is also the time for that. And everybody, probably most people know what this is, but this is a Crocagator head knocker. It's probably, I feel like, one of the most well-known buzz baits, probably at least in the Ozarks. And this is actually the X-Bite, which is like a newer version. And it's actually designed without the skirt, and it's got 2 nice little wire keepers on it that you can, it holds like this. This is a Z-Man goat. It's like indestructible, instead of like a horny toad, which I mean, that's what I used to use. And it's like the little feet get tore off that thing it seems like every 10 minutes you got to put a new toad on there, and then you're having to carry like 3 or 4 bags of toads with you. This Z-Man goat will stay on there for like the whole year. I mean, you'll never have to replace it. And those keepers on here that are built in, they hold it really good. You don't have to use glue or anything. So anyway, I put that goat on there. This X-Bite is designed, this is, let's see here. I got one of the original head knockers without the skirt on it. But you can, if you look at that hook and then this hook, I don't know if you can tell, but this is actually set back a little further on the X-Bite, which is, it helps eliminate your need to put a trailer hook on there because, you know, the shaft is a little bit longer. I honestly, I don't like throwing a trailer hook on my buzzbait just because it gets tangled up in the legs. If it gets hung up more. And I mean, I know you know, you might catch some more fish on it. And I'm not gonna say I wouldn't put a trailer hook on there if I was getting a lot of short strikes, but I feel like with this X-Bite, you don't really need a trailer hook as much. But this Crocagator head knocker buzzbait is kind of like the gold standard. I mean, and what I do, like a little trick that a lot of people who throw these know, is you can adjust your wire, and so that when it hits that head, it makes that clacking sound that really draws the strikes. But there are certain times when the fish aren't as aggressive, so you can just bend that wire up a little bit, and then you don't have the clacker. You can either have it with the clacker, without the clacker, by just a little of an adjustment. And these things, you'll use them for like 5 or 10 minutes, and you'll start to get that really good squeak. This is a brand new one, but you get that really good squeak that you love to have on a buzzbait. And these last forever. The wire is super strong. The blades are really high quality. So I mean, you catch tons of fish on them. This is something that pretty much from now through like December even, I'm probably going to have this on the deck because it catches the big fish and it's fun to throw, and you know, it's an easy bait to throw.
Yeah, I tore a toad off of this one here just to show you how the keeper system is set up on that. So you can slide any, you know, soft plastic, whatever, you know, you can put a crawl on there. You can put a swim bait. A lot of times I'll put a swim bait on there instead of a toad, and it works great. But that's the keeper system. So that system right there allows that Z-Man plastics, that Elastex, to stay on the hook. Not every keeper system is going to do that. You need those little wires to really dig into that.
That wire's a big key.
It is.
And then having it doubled up like that.
Yep.
That makes that bait just, instead of having to glue one on, it makes it glue on there.
Yep.
Exactly. That's how I've got some other manufacturers' buzz baits, and usually there's a glob of super glue just to hold the bait on there because you get so frustrated. And then if you're not using a Z-Man, they're just pulling right off, and then you're pulling. That's where you get your nice little glob of super glue on the front of your buzz bait. So
yeah, and like you said, the cool thing about this buzz bait is if you want it clacking, say you've got a lot of wind, you really need to make a presence. Well, that's when your head knocker, you know, the actual knocking part comes into play. But if you need something a little bit subtler, so a little bit, you know, calmer conditions, maybe slick conditions, then you just, that's all you got to do. Just pull it up, and it's not knocking anymore. It's a little bit more finessey of a buzz bait, I would say. So it's kind of, it's like two buzz baits in one, basically.
Yeah.
Well, then
and
fishing down there in the Ozarks, you skip a lot of docks. So a skirted buzz bait versus putting some sort of soft plastic on there,
right? And one that has a keeper that's not going to slide down.
Makes a big difference when you're skipping docks.
Yeah, so this thing will skip pretty dang good.
Mm-hmm.
This is a 1/2 ounce version. Now, and this here is the regular head knocker that would normally have a skirt that I don't have on there right now. But I wanted to talk about the blade design, and this is something I noticed about the blades. And I'll be curious if you guys have noticed this. So there's two different styles of blades. If you look here, the way that wire goes through the blade, it starts on one side, goes through the middle, and then comes out the other side.
Yeah.
So that's called a line through, and that gives it a nice, like, even rotation. And what I've noticed is on, and I think Jim Dill probably or the original designer of the head knocker figured this out. On the 3/4, they've got the offset blade, and so that that blade, the wire is entirely on one side. So when it spins, it actually, that gives it a lot more of a wobble in the water and creates more commotion. I feel like that was done intentionally on the 3/4 ounce. And if you ask people that fish tournaments at Lake of the Ozarks, they swear by the 3/4 version. And I think that's part of the reason why, is because it's got a lot more of a wobble due to that offset blade, which gives it a whole different action. And I think that draws like the big strikes, kind of like throwing a big swim bait. And so I mean, that's something that I kind of noticed. I haven't ever really seen that publicized anywhere, but that's a difference on the blade between like the half, if you're wanting like something a little bit more, if it's maybe if you're trying to get more bites, or if it's calmer conditions. And then if it's like really windy and a lot of waves, if you go to that 3/4, that's going to give it a lot more disturbance. So
yeah, nice. That's some industry inside stuff there. I didn't even notice that, man, to be quite honest. Good eye.
That Ozark wobble. We talked about the
Ozark
the
wobble.
Alabama shake and the, what is it, Tennessee twitch?
Two-step or twitch.
Twitch, two-step.
That's the Ozark wobble.
Ozark wobble.
So then switching gears, going a whole nother direction. This is another one of my favorites. I got a Maxent General on here. I know you guys like those. I love those.
Yep.
This is a quarter. This is their football shaky head from Crocagator, and it's got like an EWG hook on it. If I take this bait off, you'll see
Be
it's
careful,
got.
those are expensive.
They are. They're like over $1 a piece.
Yes.
So let's see if I can. If you look at that screw lock, boy, that's harder to do than what you think. It's got that little straight part on the wire, which sounds like a little thing, but it's like a centering pin when you go to screw your bait on there. Having that little bit of wire gets it started straight.
Sure.
And it makes it so much easier to get the bait up on there versus just like a little screw spring without that. And then basically once you screw that on there, you just figure out where your hook's going through, push that through. And then something I do, this is a little trick. Here we talk about people losing fish. This is something I do on my jigs. I do it on a lot of baits. I take my pliers and I bend that hook point out like about 10 degrees. And then when you text pose it, you can see it kind of sticks out a little bit. The fish don't care. And when you set the hook, that's going to make sure you get a good hookup. But this shaky head with you can put a Cinco on there. You can I used to use jump dingers all the time. Now I use the Maxent Generals. But I have caught so many fish on this setup right here. 15-pound line, fluorocarbon's what I use, a 7-foot medium heavy rod. And you can fish this from 1 foot out to probably about 12 or 15 foot deep. And then like in the summertime, I would actually use this setup with a 3/8, same head. It's the shaky football, but I go to a 3/8 and I would fish that at night at Lake of the Ozarks and brush piles and stuff. And it works great. And I mean, Crocagator's got a whole line of different shaky heads, not just the football heads. They got the gator shakers. They've got like a 5/8 that pairs up great with a mag trick worm. They've even got a 1/8 ounce that you can put with like a zoom, like just a regular trick worm and like a spinning rod, and just you can catch a gazillion fish on that thing, just throwing it everywhere. I mean, that's a bite getter. So I think the shaky heads are one of Crocagator's one of their favorite things that they have that I like.
Yeah, that's a unique shaky head with that EWG hook like that. You don't see that very often. They can accommodate a little bit thicker plastics.
I'm pretty sure, wasn't there a kind of a big time tournament down at Lake of the Ozarks last week that was won by Jesse Wiggins on a jig-headed worm?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty sure there was. So
Shaky head catches them right now. I mean, it's really something to have. Yeah, there you go.
Just for comparison, this is the gator shaker. That's not the football, and it has that same screw lock on it, but it's a round bend hook. So it's a different type of hook, and some people really like that better. You get great hookups with it, and they've got this comes in different sizes also. But that's another option that they have. They have some great shaky heads. So I also wanted to talk about, this was another thing on the list, which was the muskrat.
I saw you throwing that jig head around a little bit too.
Yeah, and this is a gator lock jig head.
Okay.
Which I'll have to pull this off in a minute so I can show you how that works. But this is a very versatile thing, which is huge for kayakers. You want to be able to use what you bring for a lot of different things. I mean, you could put a swim bait on here. It's to make a great swim bait jig head. But this muskrat, this is a killer for like skipping around docks. This thing skips like a stone, and it has this gator lock wire deal on here that I'll pull that up a little so you can see it. So that wire there, when you push it down, you push it through the plastic, and then you hook it around the shank of the hook, which I'm probably not gonna be able to do it now that I'm on camera. And once you do that, it locks that plastic on there. Nowhere. And so you can skip this thing around docks and underneath. I mean, you probably skip it 20, 30 foot underneath the dock. And I mean, that's huge at Lake of the Ozarks. But I mean, you can pitch this around cover. It's got a nice weed guard on it. It's not too heavy, but that hook is awesome. I mean, you're going to drag the big ones out with that hook. And I use this at Kentucky Lake. This is a crocodile tube. They have great tubes also. Some of the best tubes out there. I took and I spiked the tail on it a little bit. But it's the same deal. You use that gator lock to lock the tube on there. I caught one of my key fish at Kentucky Lake skipping this tube underneath the dock. And so, I mean, this muskrat is kind of where I started, is one of my favorite crocodile baits. And the reason I like it so much is because you can use it for so many different things. Not just you can use it like this on the gator lock, but so I mean, I got a jackhammer here. See if I can hold that up. But I trimmed it down a little bit and put it on jackhammer, and it makes a great trailer for a jackhammer. And then this is on the Weesey jig. Trimmed it down a little bit and makes a good jig trailer. And so, I mean, you can use it for a lot of different things. You could Texas rig it if you're like punching or something like that, or flipping in heavy cover. You just Texas rig it. You can also Carolina rig it. A lot of things you can do with it. It's kind of like like everybody's throwing sweet beavers and stuff. It's like that, except it's got the big legs on it. It's got more action. And so the muskrat is it's a really good bait.
Yeah, and before you go on, the crocodile tube is, I've did some videos on fishing the stupid tube rig, and that crocodile tube is a really good one for that stupid tube rig.
It's thinner and longer.
Yeah, it works really good because it's a little bit tricky finding the right tube for that, but that's a good one to work with that stupid tube stuff.
Yeah. Some tubes are really stiff. They've got like thick sidewalls on them. And you got to have the right combination of the size being right, the softness of the tube and all that. And I just feel like it's really good and salty. It's got a lot of good.
Good one thing about that crocodile tube is the length, and it's consistent from tip to tail, right? So it doesn't have like a bubble. some of those tubes that you get, it's streamlined. Some of those tubes that you get, the head has got a fat head on it, and you can't really get a stupid tube in there. Or even if you do Texas rig it, it doesn't want to fall right, or it's just going to spiral back on you the entire time.
Yeah,
So,
all tubes are not created equal. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't like a really like you were saying, a really thick tube. I mean,
Right.
that's already a ton of plastic. It's
Right.
already hard enough
and
to get.
now you're trying to put a 4-aught hook through it.
Yeah, and you got just this big nasty tube. You don't need all that. So I like something that it's going to collapse a little bit and it's going to set right on the hook. And that's, I mean, it really is a better tube.
And especially with a stupid tube, because you don't have enough. You're already limited with the amount of bite that you have on that, right? It's not like you're jamming a 5-aught hook through a tube there.
Justin, I would have to agree with you. Hawgz Custom Baits, they're 6 1/4 inch shaky head. If you guys are looking for a good shaky head worm out there to pair up with the Crockett Gator shaky head, that's a really good one. I've caught a ton of fish. I know Jay Bethel was on here earlier. He's caught a ton of fish on that Hawgz Custom Baits 6 1/4. That's my favorite size, is 6 1/4.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's a good one, dude. They don't use any salt in their plastic, so it's kind of a high float worm, bunch of different colors. He'll custom.
But it stands up really good.
Yeah, it's good. It's got really good action. And you can fish it like right now. Floating worm is starting to come into play with the post spawn bass. It's a slow sink worm, just like a trick worm, but it's got a little bit more action. It's a good one. You can check them out on Facebook. Actually, they got a website now, Hawgz Custom Baits. But you're right, man. It's a good solid worm.
Clint said you did a good job with this name, by the way.
Yeah, I'm glad.
You didn't butcher it too bad.
You didn't butcher it too bad.
What else you got back on that table?
Well, and one thing I don't have, but I wanted to mention it. I hope I'm going to be getting them any day now. But Crockett Gator has just come out with their own line of swim jigs, and I haven't got my hands on one yet, but they're coming. And that's one of the things that I told Joey that we ought to include in that prize pack. They've got several different colors. They've got a dual keeper on the swim jig. She's on it, man. They got, I think it comes in 3/8, half, and 5/8 if I remember right. And it's got a nice, like, kind of a really streamlined cone head on it. I think it's going to be a really good swim jig. So you'll have to check those out. Look for them. They're coming soon.
It's swim jig time too.
It is. It's.
I threw it a little bit today. It wasn't going on, but I think there was too much wind, so I had to pick up a spinner bait. But
usually those slicker little slight chop is the best day that I found on that.
Once you start getting that first round of post spawners, bed garters and stuff, it seems like the swim jig really starts happening. And
heck yeah,
that's going on right now.
So I wanted to talk real quick about their jigs. I have to talk about the Weesey jig. This is the 5/8. This is kind of a football head style, but it can be used as pretty much like an all-purpose jig. It's got a good heavy weed guard on it. It's designed that way for being able to pull it through heavy cover, brush piles. Mark Weesey kind of, I think, designed this and tested it on Lake of the Ozarks. Fishing comes through rock, comes through wood. Great for heavy cover. It's got a really stout hook on it. One thing I would say is maybe if you're a table rock or someplace and you were throwing this on lighter line, you might take and trim some of the strands off that weed guard a little bit. But it's just a great all-purpose jig. It comes, they got 3/8, 5/8, and they just came out with a 7/8. So I think that's going to be really good for that post-spawn bite at places like Lake of the Ozarks, where you get out there on the points and you're kind of stroking a jig and fishing, deep structure with that. It's going to be really good for that. And then they also have the Zapper jig, which is kind of the original Crockett Gator jig. And they have two different styles. This one has got it's got an HD hook, which is if you're like heavy cover, big fish. And then they also have like their light wire hook. And they got this in 3/8 and a half. And I've got this one finessed up, spidered, with a little rage craw. It's a baby rage craw on it. But I had this from Table Rock, and then this one's got a baby Z craw on it. But the weed guards aren't quite as stiff on these. They got that 60-degree flat line tie, but that head design is designed to skip really well, comes through cover really well. It's a great all-purpose. Now that they've come out with the swim jig, you got that, but even before this made a really good swim jig. You could kind of use it as an all-purpose. And so personally, I kind of like the regular light wire is kind of my go-to all-purpose. I feel like in a kayak, hook sets are a little bit of an issue anyway. That light wire hook gives you a little bit better hookup ratio and penetration. So unless you're like dragging them out of something super heavy, I tend to go with the light wire hook. But so I mean that kind of covers. It's not everything Crockett Gator's got. If you go to crockettgator.com, you can look. They've got even more baits than that. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about this little dude. This has been the hot bait this year. That beaver bug.
Well, if you weren't going to show it, I was getting ready to pull him out too, because that's I fished with Josh Wisdom on Lake of Egypt. It was this winter, and 37-degree water temps on a shaky head, and that beaver bug was the deal, man. That was the deal. He crushed him out of the back of my boat with that thing. So that was my introduction, my proper introduction to that bait.
So right now, like a big deal at Table Rock is taking like a fish doctor. I use 10-pound line and a bait caster, and I use a 1/4 ounce tungsten weight and peg that with like a little rubber stop about a foot, 12, 16 inches up, and then use a fish doctor, which is like a little centipede, a 4-inch plastic. And basically it's a Mojo or a Finesse Carolina rig, and you drag that thing around. I caught a lot of fish on that at Table Rock just a couple weeks ago. And but imagine that beaver bug on there. I mean, that's something they don't see as much. It's got a little bit more action. You're still going to get that same type of finesse fall that you get. And so, I mean, it's really good for that. And I mean, I would think that even pitching that the beaver bug around like a bed fishing bait, maybe like just pitch it around beds, it would probably work good for that too. But
yeah,
I haven't experimented
so.
with that yet.
I think you throw that weightless around a bed.
Yeah, it's just got to
get just nasty.
I talked to a guy that did pretty good on the boater side at Table Rock, and he was throwing a Mojo rig. It's funny you brought that up, and because that's something, I guess it's still around, but you don't hear it much. I know there was a big push of the Mojo rig. They had the cylindrical weights, and they had the rubber inserts and the tools and everything. That was like 20 years ago.
Yeah,
maybe more than that.
Yep.
And then you kind of don't hear about it anymore, but just like everything else, it still works. My boater caught a lot of his fish on a lizard, Carolina rigged lizard, just a green pumpkin 6-inch zoom lizard. And, it's kind of that stuff still works.
We talked about getting all back to center, the black and blues, the green pumpkins, the browns. We all kind of come back to center. I mean, lizards were a staple 30 years ago, and still catch them on that.
I think I might lose my AirPods here in a minute. So if I do, hopefully my phone will switch over, but to regular phone audio. But just FYI.
You're good? Well, so in case something happens, kayaks are notoriously stealthy. You're sneaking around in backwater areas. You're quiet. have you ever actually snuck up on a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot, in your times on the water? Or do you know any fellow kayakers that have got any kind of Sasquatch stories?
I have not personally had an experience, but I feel like if somebody that was bass fishing or fishing out on the lake, if anybody was gonna see a Sasquatch, it's gonna be a kayaker, because they get in like the most quiet, remote areas way up there where nobody's at. So I definitely feel like it's gonna be a kayaker that sees one.
That makes total sense. 100%. I mean, you could just sneak right up on him. He wouldn't even have any idea.
You need to be filming. I mean, that would be Discovery Channel, all kinds.
This would be the $1 million video. Talk about viral video.
Yeah.
It's going to happen eventually. I didn't even know this, but we live in Cape County.
I haven't listened to that. So,
okay. So apparently there's a Cape County Sasquatch club or Bigfoot club or something right here in our county. And they claim that there is a active population
in
of
Cape?
Sasquatches in North Cape County.
Really?
I don't know, man.
I live in North Cape County.
I was blown away. I know. I was blown away. But I'm thinking, like Trail Tiers.
Yeah.
That stuff
like
up north.
2 miles from my house.
There's a lot of
untouched woods.
Yeah. There's a lot of forest, state and federal forest up there. So who knows? Well, it's interesting.
That was
quick.
That was quick. We got a winner.
I picked a good number.
It's Stephanie, but not the normal Stephanie that was winning.
W.
Stephanie W.
Congratulations, Stephanie W.
So Stephanie W. Gabe, tell her how to get a hold of you.
Oh, so send me a message on my Facebook page, which is Gabe Montgomery Fishing, or 10 Horse Monty, or on Instagram 10 Horse Monty 6. And if you don't have any of those socials, you can get a hold of me via email at gabrielmonty@hotmail.com. So send me your shipping information, and we're going to get you a really killer Crockett Gator package out. A lot of the stuff that Chad was talking about and some stuff that he doesn't even have yet is going to be in that prize pack. It's going to be a good one, man. It always is. A lot of good stuff. Like I said, that beaver bugs, that's a sweet one. Really, really good one.
Hellabass. You're gonna get kicked off
the moderator, man?
I know.
Moderator. Who's this Hellabass guy?
He said he had to go through like a
21-step
process to get authenticated to be on our stream tonight.
So what do you got coming up, Chad? Do you have some more tournaments? I know you got the All-American coming up. That's next year, right?
That's next year. Yeah, next spring.
Okay. So anything between now and then?
Oh man, I got a ton. There's a ton of kayak tournaments, but so I'm actually leaving on Thursday to head to Okoboji, Iowa. I don't know if you've ever heard of Lake Okoboji. It's actually, they call it the Iowa Great Lakes. There's a whole chain of lakes, or like glacier lakes up there. But West Okoboji is probably the main one, and there was a bass tournament there with like 60 boats the weekend before last. It took 27 pounds to win, and they had 7 bags over 20 pounds. It's got big largemouth, big smallmouth, full of pike and muskie and yellow perch and every fish you can imagine, but it's got some big bass in it too. And so that's where I'm headed. I've never been there, and I've got like probably less than a day to try and figure it out. But so that's the All-American Kayak Series. It'll be there this weekend. The following weekend, I'll be headed to Lake of the Ozarks for the Moyak event, and that's a one-day Saturday event. And probably, I'm expecting we'll probably have probably at least 100 boats at that. So a couple big tournaments coming up, and man, they just stack up. There's tons of kayak tournaments, and I'm kind of addicted now. So I fish all of them that I can fit in my schedule, but it's a blast. So
that's awesome.
Does that have smallies in it too?
Oh yeah, it's got big smallies. Yeah,
nice.
That's awesome. So I got to know. This is a question that I had wrote down. Nobody came up with it tonight. What's your sketchiest kayak encounter?
Sketchy. Like
sketchy,
in what way?
Crazy, funny. you know what
Like
moment.
just being in a situation where you're like, oh, I'm in a situation now, whatever it may be.
Well, I've been lucky that I haven't had anything like too terrible, but I will tell you, this happens to me like almost every time I'm out there, at least once or twice during the day. And sometimes if I'm tired, it happens more. But you can imagine, like, my rods are all sticking up behind me, like 10 rods are sticking out all over. And so you're casting all day, and like it just happens like when you least expect it, throwing a crankbait and you go to whip it and your crankbait will catch on one of the rods, and just like it just jerks rods everywhere, and your reel backlashes. And a table rock, dilute. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, good. Yeah, my phone switched over. So at Table Rock last fall, I actually hooked my flag on the back with a rock crawler. So I went to cast, hooked my, and it's like 6 or 8 feet behind me, and I hooked this flag with, and it the treble hook's embedded in there, and so I'm stuck out there trying to figure out. I mean, I my last resort, I was gonna have to go beach it and get the crankbait out, but instead, I decided I was gonna try. I stood up on the seat, and then I got those milk crates with those Plano edge boxes are pretty sturdy. So I like actually walked to the back of the kayak, standing on top of my tackle boxes to like try and get the crankbait out of the flag. So
you're like a dang trapeze artist. I mean,
it's
like
amazing.
A high wire artist.
You know what I would have done?
You could be a yoga instructor. Yeah, I would have been splash. Wow.
So, I don't know. That's probably the best I can do.
Yeah. That's funny because it gave me a flashback to Saturday when my boater was throwing a Carolina rig in the front of the boat, but he had like a 6-foot leader on that thing. And there was so many times where it almost hit the bill of my hat. Yeah, I mean, he's rearing back. He's got a 7.5-foot rod, and I'm all the way back in the back corner.
There's not much you can do.
Yeah,
there's nowhere else.
It's not as bad as an A rig, but it's still right there in your face.
I had that. There was a Kentucky lake in the fall. A guy was throwing a spook, and for some reason he's like 7.5-foot rod, and every time he'd pick up that spook to fire it, he left like 5 or 6 feet of line out.
Oh yeah,
and I was literally standing in the splash well on the back of his Ranger, and yeah. I kid you not, if I would have moved like 3 inches, I would have got it like upside the face.
Well, my buddy, my team partner Jerry I have the YOLOTech power stick in the back of my boat in the corner with the camera on it, and I've got several clips of him coming back like this, and then you see the camera, you hear the boom, and then you see the camera doing this on the pole, and he just he smacks the camera, or on the hook set, just whack, So that's crazy. I mean, I can totally understand that. I probably do that all the time if I had rods sitting vertical
like
behind
this
me.
Right here, yeah.
You're trying to get a little extra on it, and you reach back just a little bit far, and boom.
Be that 6XD cast that you.
Yeah, you just blows up,
Now you're down to 9 rods for the day.
Now that you mention it, like I really was a big Carolina rig guy, and I like 3 or 4 foot leader, and it's just really hard to do out of the kayak. I've kind of almost gotten away from that particular. I like to throw the Mojo with the lighter line and the shorter leader, but the big ball and chain with the big long leader, it's really hard to do out of the kayak. So that's one thing that's pretty tough.
I bet. I mean, it's hard. That's hard enough to do standing up on a big boat. So I can imagine on a kayak. So you typically on that Mojo rig, you're using a pretty short leader though?
Yeah, 12, 16 inches, something like. I mean, it depends. I mean, I'm giving up a lot of juice here, but so that if you use that rubber peg and like a 1/4 ounce weight, and you got like a baby brush hog or something on there, and so you can just slide that weight out, and maybe if you want to try like an 18-inch leader, you can try, you can just work it, pitch it up the bank, drag it around, and then you come up to like a nice lay down or something. You just take that weight and slide it down. Now you got a peg Texas rig. You can pitch it around the lay down and work it, and then when you go back to drag into like open bank, you can slide it back out, and it's really efficient. You can fish it different ways, and you can adjust your leader length, and you can kind of figure out what's working. You know, usually the clearer the water, the longer the leader a lot of times, but
yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm giving much.
Yeah, I'm gonna revisit that, man. I'm gonna revisit that. I know one thing you can do on a Carolina rig is use bobber stops in place of a swivel, and you get the advantage of adjustable leader. And when you get hung up, that weight will actually slide down and knock your hook off. It's almost like a lure knocker, a plug knocker down there. So that's similar to what you're talking about. It's a great concept.
Do you ever use those Carolina keepers?
I haven't in years. I used to.
I mean, that's what I generally, I mean, I'm just lazy. I don't like doing all the different knots and the swivel and everything. If I'm throwing say a bigger Carolina rig, I might use like a 1/2 ounce weight, and then I'll put like 1 or 2 of those Carolina keepers on there, and then you can adjust your leader length on those too. And anybody that doesn't know, a Carolina keeper is just like a little round piece of plastic with a slit in it, and you got to use your pliers. You squeeze it just right, and it opens that slit up, and you can slide it. And when you let off the pressure, it locks it in place, and you don't have to have like the swivel and all the knots. It just it gives you a leader that way. So I mean, when I was throwing a Carolina rig more, I was using those a lot. But I know it's not like somebody who's like a purist for the Carolina rig would probably scoff at it, but I feel like what you lose maybe a little bit of the action and stuff of a true Carolina rig where you use like a mono leader and fluorocarbon mainline and all that, but it's just so much easier, and it's like, you have less knots to fail. And so it worked for me. But
it's like the glow ball fly fishing. I don't know if that's what you're thinking.
I was thinking that, but I when he said scoff at a Carolina rig, I scoff at a Carolina rig. Period.
No matter if it's Carolina keeper.
It doesn't matter if you're throwing a Carolina keeper or
man. I tell you what, dude, I've seen that thing.
Oh, I know.
The last couple of years,
I know.
I've seen it. It's the deal. Sometimes it's just the deal. It's dumb, it's simple, but so was a shaky hit. I mean, there's nothing complicated
that
about
Mojo rig. I got schooled on that at Kentucky Lake, and that was probably, almost 10 years ago now. And the guy gave me everything, and I bought all the stuff to do it and still in my tackle box. And every once in a while, when it gets super tough, I'll throw it.
Like a Ned rig, the simplest thing. And Brian will probably kill me for letting this out of the bag, but let's just put it like this. I know there's been some recent BFLs won on a Ned rig. I'll just put it that. I'll just put it that way. So, and it's this, it's what is it? It's like the simplest do nothing little thing.
It's a turd.
It's a turd.
But
it works. I mean, when you need bites,
it's there.
They all weigh the same. It doesn't matter how you catch them. It's
there are people in the kayak world that are high level kayak anglers that pretty much throw nothing but a Ned rig and a jackhammer, and the kayakers will probably know who I'm talking about. But I mean, you don't have to make it too complicated.
And you can fish that anywhere, right? I mean, those 2 baits that you mentioned, you can fish from 35 feet to a foot and catch fish all along the way.
Yeah.
So, I think the consensus of the show tonight is keep it simple, stupid, which we forget a lot.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Don't overcomplicate it. I think the thing that I've learned a bunch the last couple of years is, and this is kind of an Ike type quote, but never give up. It's kind of like keeping it simple, like staying in the moment and keep fishing and not getting spun out. It's came to fruition so much the last 2 years as far as tournament fishing is, it can happen at any time. It only takes 5 minutes to put 5 fish in the boat. It really does. I mean, it's just a few casts away. So you got to stay focused. So many times your mind starts drifting towards the end of the day. If you're tournament fishing, you're already thinking about dinner. You're already thinking about
Mowing the grass when you get back home.
Yeah, you're already thinking about the drive home and stuff, and you still got an hour left in the tournament. And it's because maybe you don't have anything in the live well. Well, it can happen really, really fast. So staying focused and keeping your mind in the game is so important.
My biggest advice in those situations when you're really struggling, you're starting to check out, and I saw your video at Kentucky Lake. You put some nice fish in the boat like really quick at the end of the day, and same thing happened for me at Kentucky Lake at the All-American there. It was like at 12:30, I had 0 fish, and I ended up getting a nice limit over 80 inches and got me second place there. And what I did, and this is exactly, I thought to myself, I picked up that Fritz side because I enjoy throwing it. And even if I didn't catch any fish, it was something that I enjoyed throwing and I have confidence in it. So pick up a bait that you like to throw and that you have confidence in, and just keep moving and just keep fishing different stuff and don't quit. And when it gets really tough, I think that's important, is to be enjoying yourself and throwing something that you actually like to throw. Everybody has a favorite bait, and just pick that bait up and use it.
You nailed it, man. And Jim did.
Jim got it too. It's about finding the fish, not the bait. So
much of it is. And one of the hardest things to do is forcing yourself to fish slow when you're halfway spun out, when you know the fish are in a negative mood or a neutral mood, and you have to fish slow, and that's how you need to fish, but you're behind the 8 ball. It is so hard to force yourself to slow down. Even when you're using like a dragging technique or a bottom bouncing technique or something, you need to be slow rolling. Say you're throwing a shaky head, the later it gets in the tournament and the less you have in your live well, you still want to fish that thing faster than you should.
The less time it's going to make contact with the bottom.
Right. When you need to really, really slow down. To me, that's kind of the mental thing that I was kind of talking about, is forcing yourself. A lot of the tournaments that I've done good in recently have been forcing myself to downsize the weight. You can move a half-ounce weight, a half-ounce jig or a half-ounce shaky head or whatever, a lot faster and make bottom contact than you can with a 3/16 ounce. But sometimes dropping that, like the other day, I had a 1/4 ounce weight on a shaky head fishing in 22 foot of water. I dropped down to a 3/16 to force myself to have to fish slower to keep bottom contact. And sometimes you got to do that. It's hard to do, but that's one way that will force you to fish slow. And like Jim was saying, fishing becomes a mental thing. It becomes really, really mental. The longer you do it, the more mental it gets. And that just popped in my head. One of the most difficult things is to slow down when your mind's racing 100 miles an hour, forcing yourself to slow down. But sometimes that's the only way you can get a bite.
Yeah. So,
well, man, we've been on here 2.5 hours, and we've covered a lot of really good material. It's been awesome hanging out with you. A lot of great comments on here, a lot of great questions. Really appreciate everybody staying on here with us this late. Got a great giveaway. There's going to be, the winner's going to get some fine Crockett Gator products
and some new stuff
and some good knowledge. Some good stuff was shared. I learned a lot about kayak fishing.
Heck yeah. I'm going to go back and listen to this.
Yeah, maybe sometime down the road we can get you back on here and we can kind of dive into the tournament side. We didn't touch too much about the tournament success. We can kind of go down that avenue.
A whole lot we didn't talk about the specifics about how our tournaments operate and stuff like that. At some point, I'd really like to talk about, there's a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down talking about how we submit fish versus bass boats.
Yes.
The guys bring them in and weigh them versus catch, photo, release. And, you could have a whole theoretical conversation about the future of the sport and the fisheries and all that stuff by letting the fish go right away instead of dragging them around in a bass boat. And that's one of the things I like about kayak fishing, is just letting them go where you catch it. And I'm not knocking bass boat guys, because I did it for 25 years, but it's a whole nother thing that it's a conversation that'd be worth having sometime.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe this fall we'll get you back on here and we'll go down that and touch base on your tournament season and that kind of stuff. It'd be a show to definitely check out.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody wants to follow along with the action, Chad, where can they find you at?
So I mean, I have Facebook, Chad Davison on Facebook. I also have an Instagram. I'm Chad A. Davison on Instagram. Those are my two primary social medias. I've started to dip my toe into YouTube and like creating videos. I found that I like fishing more than I like making videos. And so
Oh, I'm in the same boat as you, but I also coach Little League Baseball, and my son is on that Little League Baseball team. So every night we're doing something with baseball. So I understand that. I shoot videos on the weekends when I can, and then it's like baseball all week, and I don't have time to edit. So
I've still got part 1 of Kentucky Lake with no part 2, and it's been almost 2 months now. So I mean, yeah, it's that part.
You're just building the drama.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody even cares anymore about what happened in part 2, but that was the best part. But I still got the footage. I just haven't made it.
Well, when you get it together, I'll check it out, man. For sure. And
sure.
I'll leave links to your Instagram and your Facebook, so people want to get on there and give you a like.
I spent plenty of time talking about Crocagator and Crank Wraps, 2 of my sponsors that I'm proud of, and but I also have a few others I'd like to mention.
For sure.
And I did talk about Everhart's Outdoors, but I would also like to say I know right now those Autopilot 136s and the Autopilot 120s. If you're thinking about getting one, Everhart's is the place to go. But beware, it's like everything. Supplies are limited, and who knows this summer whether you'll be able to get them. They had some shortages last year. They're looking at more shortages again this year. So if you're thinking about it, you might not want to wait. I also know that they're running a deal right now, which is the best deal I've heard of. Those autopilots run about the 136 runs about $4,500. That does come with the Minn Kota trolling motor. And they are, as part of the deal, they're throwing in that $600 80 amp hour amped battery with a charger, which is I think it's about a $600 value. So that's a pretty sweet deal. And you got your kayak, your trolling motor, and your battery and your charger. So, that's Everhart's Outdoors in Clinton. They got a full line of Old Town kayaks. They also carry New Canoe, and they got a whole lot more. That place is loaded with tackle, firearms, hunting, fishing, kayaks. It's kind of it's an outdoor superstore. So if you're near Truman Lake or if you're in Clinton, check out Everhart's. And then I also want to thank my oldest sponsor, which is Dungarees. Dungarees is a family-owned business located here in Columbia. They also have a location in St. Charles, but they're a retailer of workwear and footwear that's designed for working people in the outdoors. They are one of the nation's largest Carhartt dealers. They've got a website, dungarees.com. They've got Yeti, Timberland Pro, Merrill, Dry Shod, Carhartt, like I said, lots of outdoor brands. So check those out at dungarees.com. They've been a big supporter of me, and I appreciate them. And then I also want to thank Gorilla Grip. You guys probably always see me in my pictures. I got the blue fingerless Gorilla Grip gloves on, but they got a ton of different styles of gloves. You can check them out. They're great gloves. And I feel like, especially for kayakers, you're paddling or you're trying to hold fish down on the board and you get a spine in your hand. So it protects your hands on stuff like that. Also would like to thank Hawgz Custom Apparel. They make jerseys, and I've got a really awesome windproof, waterproof hoodie with my full, all of my sponsors. It's like a regular tournament jersey, but it's basically waterproof hoodie that you can wear out in the rain, just like a rain suit. And so that's something to check out. If you're a tournament angler, you can continue to show off your sponsors while you're in the rain. So those are, I think I see if I've forgotten anybody, but I think that's everybody. So I appreciate you letting me give a shout out to them.
Yeah, man, sure. That's Fishback, right? With the
Yep.
robe. Yeah, he was on here a while back and he was talking about that waterproof hoodie. And I wear a lot of, well, I got a sun hoodie on right now. I'm a big fan of the sun hoodie, but this is certainly not water resistant or whatever. And I thought that's a great thing.
Water. Is what that
yeah, this was going to absorb water to cool me off, but it would be cool to have a kind of a water resistant sun hoodie. And then the sun gloves too. Big fan of the sun gloves. I mean, the sun is harsh on your skin. That's one of the reasons why I wear like a sun hoodie, but then you got to put your gloves on too. You got to have gloves to cover up your hands. Anything that the sun is touching, it's going to just eat away at it over time. So the thing about a nice, jersey or sun hoodie and then gloves, all you got to do is just put a little bit of sunscreen right here and you're covered up. You put your little hoodie up, and these things are pretty comfortable. You get used to them. They're long sleeve. Everybody wants to wear short sleeves. But I would much rather have long sleeves and not have to like goop sunscreen all over my arms. And you get really used to them. They're actually, if you put a t-shirt on underneath them, you get a little bit of sweat buildup. If you have kind of a 50-50 blend, it kind of holds that moisture in.
Mm-hmm.
You get used to it. It's really the way to go, honestly. It's something I've been doing the last couple of years, and big fan of the sun hoodie /
See, when you're a bald guy like me,
you definitely need a sun hoodie.
The sun hoodies are a heaven sent, because if you forget your bucket hat that I have to wear to keep it off my ears and all that, it makes a big difference. So
yeah, Tom says he's bought a lot of Carhartt clothes from Dungarees last year. Great prices and fast shipping.
Yep.
I'll check those out.
$55. If you spend $55 or more, they got free shipping. Great customer service. I mean, they are like everybody. Some of their stuff is, sizes are hit and miss sometimes just because of supplier issues and stuff. But if you check out the website, they got a lot of great stuff. And like I said, they're great people. It's a family-owned business. I try, like, all my sponsors are people and companies that are local, and they are, for the most part, they're all family-owned, and they all support our sport. Crocagator sponsors Moyak. Crank Wraps sponsors Moyak. Gorilla Grip sponsors Moyak. I've got a great synergy with all my sponsors. You can go to Everhart's Outdoors and find Crocagator baits. You can go to Everhart's and find Gorilla Grip gloves. And so I really feel like, I'm fortunate. I pick companies that I already use their products. I like their products, and then I've been fortunate to get them as sponsors, and it's worked out really good.
Yeah, I agree 100%, man. Support these companies that are supporting the fishermen.
Shop local,
man.
Yeah.
Okay, man, we're gonna wrap this up. We will be back next Monday with another guest. I'm not sure who we're gonna have on, but
a special guest.
We'll just keep it. It's like a mystery guest. I don't know who it is, but it's a mystery guest. And Chad, it's been really awesome hanging out with you and getting to know you a little bit better. And like I said earlier, we'll get you back on here in the fall, and we'll go down another rabbit hole for a couple hours.
I would love it.
Yeah. So, all right, everybody, thanks for hanging out with us tonight, and we will see you next